Yo, Atlas speaking, and welcome to the finale of What If I Was Reborn into My Hero Academia as a civilian orphan with the light human quirk. Let the tale begin. Chapter 78, Final Round and Hero Course. The next fight was going to be a bit boring, since Bakugo will definitely win. I mean, not only is Bakugo a good counter to Naijuru, he is also trained for longer. Naijuru was already lucky enough to win against Shoto, but he won't squeak it out against Bakugo. But still, the fight was interesting to watch. Hair burns up quite easily, but Naijuru can also outgrow the spread of fire. In the end, it comes down to time. If I had more time to train Naijuru, then he might have more chances to win. Bakugo himself started properly training at a young age. Since his quirk is volatile, one can guess that he trained it in a government facility before mastering it completely. Sure, he might have gone to a gym or something, but that was after mastering his quirk properly. The government wouldn't really let a bomb run around unsupervised. At least, they shouldn't. I don't care enough to open my civics book and find out. Right now, I could see the contestants walking up the stage. The angry-looking, well-built Bakugo and the timid and somewhat skinny Naijuru. The fight started on a strong note, with Bakugo blasting himself forward in Naijuru's direction. Surprisingly, the general course student reacted in time, growing his hair and sending it to intercept his rapidly advancing opponent. Bakugo managed to spin around and blast the hair away from him. He burned quite a bit of Naijuru's hair in the process, but it grew back quickly, following the explosive student and trying to wrap itself around him. Bakugo kept blasting away at the hair that attacked him. Blown away strands of hair lay around the entire arena. Naijuru kept applying pressure on his opponent, and Bakugo himself was getting angrier and angrier as the match went on. Most of the public was cheering them on. No one really picked a side, both were already extraordinary to have made it this far. Although, you can guess that Class 1A cheered for their colleague, and some people in Class 1B cheered for Naijuru, just to spite Class 1A. I wonder who those people are. Bakugo suddenly put his hands together and sent a powerful blast in Naijuru's direction. He completely ignored the hair that was attacking him from his sides. Naijuru was forced to quickly cover himself in thick layers of hair. The entire arena already smelled like burnt hair. Naijuru was sent backwards at great speeds. The layer of hair he had put quickly burned down as another one replaced it. It was a battle of attrition at this point. Bakugo looked on, as his opponent managed to drag himself to a stop. Naijuru finally decided to use his trump card too, since there wasn't much else he could do. His hair quickly formed a giant drill, spinning in Bakugo's direction. Bakugo just snorted and rose his hands to meet the attack with an explosion. But the scattered hair in the arena quickly jumped at him and restrained him. As the drill was approaching, a large amount of hair was holding him down. I could hear an angry shout. Howitzer impact blew away all of the hair restraining him and the drill in front of him. He didn't try to create a miniature tornado this time, probably using the oxygen created by the spin of the giant drill. It was enough to fuel a powerful explosion. I could hear little Eri gasping a bit. Maybe? I can also do explosions. Why doesn't she react like that to mine? Rumi had a wide grin on her face after seeing the attack. I guess sparring with me became a bit boring for her, especially since she's well aware I'm always holding back. Naijuru himself was flung out of the ring by the explosion. He crashed into the wall before he had a chance to soften his landing. Yep, he was knocked out instantly. As Naijuru was taken to the infirmary, Midnight announced Bakugo as the winner of the first-year school festival. In the end, Naijuru held out quite well. Calling his quirk flawless might be a bit far-fetched, but it's certainly one of the stronger ones in this school. If only he had more time to master it in combat. Oh well, there's always the next year. And he qualifies as a hero course student quite easily. I'll see to it that both he and Shinso end up as proper heroes by the end of this high school. Handing out the medals went about the same. Midnight and All Might talking over each other. Honestly, after working here for a year I can understand the lack of coordination. Bakugo was still dissatisfied with his win, but it wasn't as bad as last time. Since Shoto didn't go easy on him personally. Tokoemi was a bit disappointed. I guess he was a bit disadvantaged whilst fighting in a brightly lit stage. His opponent also ended up being a counter to his Quirk, which was never a nice experience. Naijuru looked quite proud of himself as All Might put the medal around his neck and whispered some advice or compliment in his ear. A bit weird, but it worked well in encouraging the student. Bakugo didn't bite his medal this time. He still seemed reluctant to accept it. But he didn't get much chance to complain as Toshi just snapped it around his neck. And just like that, the festival was over. I didn't stick around to congratulate Naijuru for his achievement. I will do that when I see him in the hero course. Shinso also doesn't need any more consoling. He just got unlucky. It's a bit of a shame that I didn't participate. It would have been unfair, sure. But I could have held back or something. Although, Recovery Girl would get mad at me if I so much as scratched another student. Especially since I already asked her for help during Naijuru's training. Eri used so much energy cheering the students on that she eventually fell asleep on Rumi's lap. Rumi herself didn't want to wake up Eri. So I decided to take them both home with minimal movement. Just in case all three of us in light and flew us home at a decent speed. When we got home, I levitated Rumi in the living room and Eri on the bed. I joined Rumi to watch some television after tucking Eri in properly. The very next day, I entered Nisa's office to talk about transferring both Shinso and Naijuru over to the hero course. The process was much smoother than I expected. Nisa having already prepared everything to transfer the two of them. Shinso ended up in Class 1A while Naijuru was assigned to Class 1B. Aizawa said he wanted to train Shinso, so that's why he was put in Aizawa's class. As for Naijuru, they figured it might be better for an emitter to teach another emitter. Well, both Aizawa and Vlad are emitters. But Vlad's quirk is a bit more similar to Naijuru's. All in all, it's a bit sad that they were split up. But the school can't really have more students in a class than in the other. Especially since these two classes always ended up competing with one another. And, just like that, I called my two friends to give them the good news. They both seemed very excited. I now realize that I made the school year much more boring by doing this. But it's not like I need to attend. In the past few weeks, I only attended for Shinso and Naijuru. The others are mostly just acquaintances. I also have to find Kyudai eventually. Oh well, I'll deal with him eventually. Chapter 79, Internships and Storms? A week quickly went by. After the transfers were over, you can guess what happened. Well, nothing happened to me. But Naijuru got an internship with Best Jeanist, alongside Bakugo. And Shinso got taken in by Aizawa, who decided to train him during this time, instead of going out and fighting villains. Or whatever they do in their internships. Both Naijuru and Shinso now owe me lunch for the rest of their school life. It's the bargain I struck with them. Mainly to not make them feel like they owe me anything, it usually puts a strain on friendships. But they will probably regret this deal. They have yet to witness just how much of Lunch Rush's food I can stuff myself with. Regardless, Naijuru and Shinso have started making new friends in their respective classes. Although I still train and eat together with them. Well, only when I actually show up at school. Lately, I only appear to teach my own classes. I won't really be doing anything about Stain. Although he was annoying in this series, he's not much of a threat to me. Although, I will still be around Hosu at that time. I am curious if the Nomas will appear. It is unlikely. The only reason they appeared in this series is that Shigaraki wanted to cause some chaos. With him behind bars and with All for One dead, I can't see any reasons for them to appear. But it doesn't hurt to be cautious. There is a lot of stuff happening right now. Finding Kyudai will be a bit painful, which is why I've been postponing it. But should he actually start moving, I will have to take him down regardless. The internships started just like they did in the series. I also didn't really take any interns. Why would I ever want to carry around students during patrols? During this week, the hero courses also got to choose their hero names. I never actually got to choose the name for myself. But it's a bit late for a rebranding. I'm already a symbol. I got countless emails from toy companies and people asking to use my image in their stuff. Being a hero is a lot more profitable than I thought. If Stain heard my thoughts, he would be raging around like an idiot. But doing hero work for money isn't wrong at all. Saving people should be a selfless act. That's just bullshit you hear in motivation books. Firefighters have a salary, so do policemen. Heroes aren't any different from that in this world. You don't need a virtuous mentality to save somebody. Endeavor is a good example. His actions save a lot of people, but he is scum. As a person, he doesn't deserve even an iota of respect. But as a hero, he's one of the best. I wonder how my presence changed this world. Sometimes, I feel that things would have gone well even without my presence. But, I guess that's the problem of an outsider like me. I have completely integrated into this world. I have people I care about and love. But sometimes, I can't help but feel out of place. It doesn't matter much, I'll get over it eventually. It's only been around 6 years of being in this world. Although I did spend the first 5 not really talking with anyone, Izuku/Bakugo don't count. Right now, I'm sitting on a building somewhere in the middle of Hosa City, scouting out the city with my perception. To be honest, if I were to talk about the disadvantage of my ability, the only thing coming to my mind would be the fact that everything moves rather slowly. A lot of Nomus appeared out of nowhere. I guess Kyudai gave someone a copy of All for One. Although, I am unsure of his reasons. The Nomus he sent were a lot stronger than the ones in the series. They all had powerful quirks and regeneration. I didn't really let them run around unchecked. I made a few clones and sent them to intercept the Nomus. I remained on my apartment building, still looking around for who might have been responsible for this. I remember All for One's warp quirk to have a lot of restrictions. The only reason he could even show up on that highway was that Shigaraki was there. As I was sitting there, wondering where the storm above my head came from, I could see some lightning strikes coming down from the sky, about to hit some apartment buildings. It looked like it would cause some damage, so I decided to intercept them with a few beams. It didn't take effort anyway. But more and more kept trying to rain on that part of the city. So I decided to focus my perception there. I could feel a man of average height, rectangular gray eyes with white pupils. He also had white hair that reached just past his shoulders, swept back away from his face. He had his palms directed towards the sky. He looked a bit frustrated. He was wearing a strange bodysuit. I couldn't really recognize him. But his quirk definitely had something to do with weather manipulation. I decided to close the distance, instantly appearing 2 meters in front of him. Behind me were Endeavor and Gran Torino, looking a bit confused. I just looked at them and said, "Endeavor, do you pick your sidekicks from the nursing home?" Endeavor didn't really respond, only looking at me hatefully. I guess he thinks Shoto lost because of Naijuru. He probably heard from All Might that I had trained Naijuru. After all, he definitely looked into Naijuru after his son lost to him. Gran Torino at least bothered to reply to me. Disrespectful brat. Although I could see a hint of a smile on his face. He probably realized that the situation is now under control. Nine thought he could use this as a distraction and hit us with lightning. But he was a bit too slow. Well, the lightning was fast, but I could clearly see when the clouds were about to release it. So I could easily stop it. Hey, that's rude. Stay put, I'll pay attention to you later. He looked extremely angered. Endeavor himself was also getting a bit annoyed. I don't know if it was at me or the villain. So, what's with the silence? I said, looking at the fiery hero. He clenched his fists a bit. I don't have time to waste on you. I'll go do my job. He left with a huff. A bit rude. But okay. I won't bother telling him that every Nomu is being dismembered with lasers. Let him run around a bit, exercise. I doubt you need much help here, said Gran Torino with a bit of a sigh. I could feel the villain behind me almost having an aneurysm. Stop ignoring me. He put his hands in front of him at shoulder height. Violet lasers came out of his fingers. A completely different Quirk. He's definitely not a Nomu, which leaves only one answer. I feel a bit insulted, I said from behind him. He didn't even have time to blink. Playing with lasers in front of me? I kicked him into the street, breaking the asphalt with his face. He didn't even have time to react properly. He clearly only had a weakened version of All for One, not having gathered many quirks. Now that I think about it, I've seen his face before. Maybe he made an appearance in the series somewhere? I can't really remember him at all. But I don't care anymore. I have to hunt down Kyudai now. Chapter 80, Finding Waldo and Trap? The villains attacking was sudden. The people of Hosa City were extremely lucky that there were a lot of heroes present on the streets. Mainly because most of the surrounding cities were patrolled by the Yellow Flash. Heroes usually give up on patrolling the same places as him, it was to maximize efficiency. Most heroes hated being outshined, hee. It wasn't that they hated him, it was just that they also wanted recognition. And getting recognition was impossible when the symbol of justice was patrolling. That symbol of justice was well received by the public. It manages to instill a certain kind of fear into the villains, seeing the strongest villain alive torn to shreds repeatedly on live television. It also made some of the public fear him. But after the situation was explained properly by many trustworthy news publications, the public calmed down. The symbol of peace and the symbol of justice are considered similar by many. The symbol of peace fought to create a peaceful world, while the symbol of justice fights to bring the villains to justice. In the end, they are both greatly contributing to the peace of the population. Recently, after the festival, the Yellow Flash became the second-ranked hero. He forgot to check out his updated ranking, but most people know it already. You can imagine how the former second place reacted. He started holding a grudge, but he didn't hate Allan. Just like he didn't hate All Might. Both him and Gran Torino were first responders in this villain attack. They were chasing a few flying beasts, similar to the ones that had attacked the car transporting Shigaraki. The public didn't really call them Nomus. The police considered them victims too, but had yet to figure out a way to save them. They were stopped by a strange man. Neither of them recognized him. "Who are you?" screamed Endeavor, probably hoping that he wasn't a villain. Gran Torino, however, got into position to rush at him. Civilians don't just block the way of heroes, after all. You can call me Nine. Keep that name in mind as you die. His face seemed mostly emotionless. It made both Torino and Endeavor flinch a bit as they noticed the storm gathering above the city. Lightning was threatening to fall around them as Nine looked on. He was waiting for them to be incapacitated, probably to steal their quirks. But all the lightning he had called was intercepted. Both he and the heroes looked confused, none of them could see the light beam that had hit the massive lightning bolt. Nine tried again and again, but he never could manage to bring down anything. The heroes were about to jump in and attack him head-on. But another person landed right in between them. It was obviously Allan. Everything from his introduction to his mannerisms annoyed Endeavor. But they surprised Gran Torino a bit. He had seen Allan disregard All for One when they were fighting, everyone found it funny, maybe anticlimactic. But Gran Torino found it terrifying. He had fought All for One in the past, he knew how strong that man was. And he could tell that he had returned to his prime during that fight with the Yellow Flash. But it didn't change anything at all. He was just as easily thrown around, as the hero yawned, patted his hair and fixed his glasses from time to time. It was hard for the old man to imagine someone who has that type of strength. But he was right in front of him. And he could see it. During this time Allan hadn't even glanced at the villain that was intimidating to both him and Endeavor. The only time he did so was to tell him to stay put as if scolding a misbehaving child. He had completely turned that calm and collected man into a mad dog. Endeavor too could see it clearly. Therefore, he decided to go elsewhere. It was clear that the situation wasn't going to require any more of his attention. Gran Torino stuck around for a bit longer, only to watch as 9 was defeated in a single move. There was no tension, no build-up, nothing. Just a kick. That was all it took. POV Allan Hope you didn't mind that I gave a bit more context on what's been happening. After finishing off the weirdo, I looked at Gran Torino. Can I leave making sure he gets detained to you? I doubt Kyudai will have any way to retrieve this person. He himself will be going behind bars. The old man sighed a bit and shook his head. You young ones and your fear of responsibility. That's mean. I don't fear responsibility, I fear doing paperwork. Okay, thank you. Although he didn't technically say yes, I'm sure that's what he meant. I'm not going to listen to him preach about how things were back in the day. After saying that, I flew off, leaving the old man to deal with the incapacitated villain. Truth is, I doubt he would be able to do much even if he wakes up. All for One could take hits like the one before because he regenerated and had an impact-absorbing quirk. But any other person will either die or turn comatose. The villain still had some sort of physical strengthening quirk. He won't die, but he definitely won't wake up anytime soon. Right now, I'm trying to find Kyudai. The method is quite simple. I spread my perception around me and I fly around Japan looking for him. My current limit is around 20 kilometers. With my speed, I should be able to do this in a second. But the information would overload my mind quite a bit. It would likely make me faint. So this process will likely take me around 1 hour. The Nomas in Hosa City have all been dealt with, so I can leave freely. I miss not having a body. My brain is the reason I can't use my perception as I did back in the Starfield. It simply wouldn't be able to process more information. It has been slowly improving, but I doubt it'll ever reach the level it had back then. I managed to find Kyudai after about 20 minutes. He is about 6 prefectures away. My head does hurt a bit. If I had to scout the entirety of Japan, it would feel like someone split it open. His hideout was deep underground, in the middle of a mountain range. But it's not like my perception is restricted by that. Besides the doctor, there were only Nomas in there. They won't be a big issue. They'll stop responding after Kyudai is done in. He is too much of a threat to be left alive. I called Nizu and told him my location and that I found the base of the ones that attacked Hosu. He seemed a bit surprised by this. I decided to burn my way down to him with a huge laser. It was fast and effective. I landed right near him. His eyes widened in fear when he saw me. Protect me! He screamed, but the Nomas didn't have time to twitch. Just as the words left his mouth, I pierced his chest with a spear. He looked at me in shock. But then a deranged smile appeared on his lips. You're late. He died before he could say anything else. But, the second his heart stopped beating, a giant explosion engulfed the entire laboratory. The shockwave shook all nearby cities. From a distance, it looked like a nuke had gone off. People were panicking as the mountain range was erased. Chapter 81, Last Words and Information. I wasn't expecting an explosion. I mean, what type of sane person rigs his own secret laboratory to explode like this? I guess Kyudai can't really be called sane. Right now, I'm standing in a huge crater. The former beautiful mountain range was leveled. There is nothing left to indicate that this place was once a vast forest. It's a bit sad. But what's even sadder is that the corners of my coat got a bit burned. I guess I'll have to bother Power Loader to fix this. I wasn't really injured. But you might be able to say that this development blew me away. I still managed to turn into light before I even got touched, besides the cape. There wasn't any radiation around, not any that I could notice. But I still flew up just to be safe. So there isn't much else left to say. Besides Cute Eye's last words, that is. They were unnerving. He was obviously not expecting me to come here. But he definitely wasn't planning for this to be some kind of trap. He likely meant that he had transferred All for One to somebody. It definitely wasn't the person I just fought. That guy only had an empty copy of it. I also doubt Cute Eye would let him run around unchecked anywhere near my side of the country. I have no way of knowing who All for One was transferred to, which is quite concerning. But, whoever they are, they shouldn't be in Japan anymore. Cute Eye wouldn't be so smug about it if that person is anywhere near this place. Since he already knows I can find people easily. He wouldn't have been so joyful in his last moments if All for One's successor was in danger too. I could sense somewhere around 10 helicopters closing in on the site. They were either the police or from news stations. But the majority of them were from the police. They probably started moving towards here because of Nizu. I told him I'd have a few people to transport. But I guess that's no longer possible. I had come up with an idea to help the Nomas turn back to normal. Eri should be able to rewind them to how they were before their experiments. Although I don't really like it much. It means she has to use her ability on humans. I do not doubt that Nizu also has this idea. He probably didn't bring it up because she still only has basic control over her quirk. Since every single Nomu that was in this laboratory is dead, there isn't much we can do. There are still a few in custody. At least they have some semblance hope left. I entered one of the helicopters. The people on board looked a bit startled by my appearance. Hello! Would you please put me on the line with your boss? I don't have the number of the chief of police in this prefecture. And calling Nizu to get it would be annoying. The policeman in front of me nodded, dialed his chief and handed me the phone. He didn't get to ask for autographs or anything like that, as I just jumped right back out with his phone in my hand. But I'm sure he would have wanted one. Ego speaking up. Yeah, this is the Yellow Flash. I'm just going to inform you that the base I attacked was rigged with explosives. There were no captives inside, besides the people that were experimented on. I didn't want to waste too much time speaking to this guy. That's all well and good. But how exactly did you find this base? Said the obviously confused police chief. Oh, I'm going through a tunnel. Bye! I just hung up. Why would I tell him how I found the hideout? I went back to the helicopter and gave the policeman his phone back. I left just as quickly. I would probably get a few phone calls about this, but I need to give Nizu and Toshi the heads up. They'll definitely be excited to find out that All for One's quirk is still around. I feel a bit bad that I haven't hunted down Cute Eye earlier, but it doesn't matter much. I could kill the first All for One, I'll also be able to kill the second. But there won't be a third. Cute Eye isn't going to come back from the dead to make a third All for One. I doubt anyone other than him knows how to transfer quirks. Getting to UA took me about 1 second. Nizu was alone in his office. Toshi was likely off doing hero work or something like that. I entered quickly, not really bothering to knock anymore. Hey, Nizu. I have some stuff to talk to you about. He nodded as I sat down and started explaining the situation I was currently in. It took me a while. But since I don't have to mind my words. Since I'm being specific about everything in order to give him a warning. Nizu should be smart enough to know what to ask and what to avoid talking about. So, you're telling me that the scientists that made the Nomas found a way to transfer and copy quirks? He summarized that story rather quickly. Essentially, yes. But he probably also managed to transfer All for One into someone else. Or into a few people at the very least. I could see that Nizu wasn't truly pleased. One person in Hosa City also had All for One, it was likely a copy of it. But it's still concerning. Nizu seemed deep in thought, probably trying to wrap his head around all of the new information I just gave him. But he recovered eventually. The holder or holders of All for One won't be acting again anytime soon. Since you just captured one of them, it should be fine. Nizu started tapping his desk with one of his paws. Are you truly certain that this information is true? He asked again, for clarification. I just nodded slowly. I'll be prepared to face him. You don't need to worry too much. Whoever he is, he can't be a greater threat than the original All for One. This seemed to calm Nisa down a bit, but not by much. I'll have to make a few calls now. I'll call a staff meeting later this week. You should be present. I nodded. After leaving the room, I could sense that Nisa stopped for a bit, putting his palm on his forehead. Then he got to work, informing people of my discoveries. All for One might have been a secret, but a few people still need to know about it. It's to ensure the safety of others. All Might is definitely one of the people that Nisa will call. But my job is done, for now. I hope I can find Rumi at home. I left UA right after leaving my coat to Power Loader. He grumbled around a bit, but still took the coat and shooed me off. I really feel like eating some fruit cakes right now. Chapter 82, Schedule and Invisibility. About 2 months passed since the whole laboratory situation. You can guess that Rumi didn't like hearing about me standing in the middle of an explosion of nuclear proportions. She was really concerned for me, refusing to let go of my hand for an entire day. I didn't mind it that much, neither of us felt like going to work anyway. Eri didn't really get what happened, but she probably got worried after seeing Rumi's concern. I managed to calm them down. Eri was the easiest to calm down since she could see me acting like usual. But Rumi said I should take a break from hero work for a while. I obviously listened to her. Mainly because it seemed to calm her down a bit. And it's not that I was doing much in the first place. We sparred daily since that day. It's a bit odd, she seems to want to get stronger. I mean, she always wanted that, but we didn't spar often after adopting Eri. Mainly because she didn't have much free time to do so. Between hero work, school, teaching and taking care of Eri, we didn't have much time left for anything else. Well, I always finished hero work quickly, so I always have some time to write manga or whatever. But Rumi can't patrol the streets as quickly as I can. So she decided to cut from her patrolling time so we could spend it together, just the two of us. Since Eri is at school during that time, my schedule has always been a bit packed. I take watching television very seriously. That and training my friends and the other students. Eri also had her field trip, something that gave me and Rumi even more alone time. We filled it with various activities. I also found out that I was now the number 2 hero. I guess that explains Endeavor's reaction to seeing me. Since he always tried to surpass All Might and become number 1, going down a grade should be very discouraging for him. But I doubt he's going to give up so easily. There was also a staff meeting. The meeting Nisa called was not exactly important to me. He just informed the staff of what I told them. All Might probably already knew since he didn't react much when hearing it. He was deep in thought during the entire meeting. Probably thinking of the appearance of a second All for One. Still, he would be laying low for now. If he's even in this country at this point. Kyudai would probably condition the next All for One to take revenge for his late master. Which is honestly a happy thought to me. Knowing that eventually, all of my problems will just come to me by themselves. Letting me deal with them all at once. In the past few weeks I also somehow remembered that to help Toru with her invisibility problem. Although she needed to remind me again during class. Thankfully, I had great excuses as to why I forgot about her. One of them being the fact that I had to deal with the whole USJ incident and I fought All for One. As for how her quirk works, it basically creates a screen that covers her entire body in a barrier that light cannot touch. I was able to bypass that barrier. It took a bit of control, but I basically drilled a hole in her barrier with the light I emanated. The barrier regenerated instantly, but I managed to break it down and take a picture of her. If she somehow manages to control that field, she should be able to turn off her invisibility and even expand the barrier to her clothes. Her barrier seems to react differently to different types of light. It rejects natural sunlight the most, so using the light I produced was a lot more effective. But I can't help her much with that. Besides giving her some pointers. But this is a good start. Since her ability was classified as a mutant one, she didn't really know of a way to go about controlling it. But, from what I've seen, she's more of an emitter. And emitter quirks are trained differently from mutant ones. Maybe she'll have some success in controlling it after training extensively. As for her appearance, well, she could be described as cute. She obviously didn't use makeup, duh. She had green eyes and black hair, a bit of an unusual combination in Japan. Her face was round, much like Ochako's, but her eyes were a bit thinner. She was also very pale, which shouldn't really come off as a surprise. It also makes sense that Aizawa also couldn't turn off her quirk. His quirk only works if he looks directly at the person. He couldn't see Toru, so he couldn't use it on her. Mina was really excited seeing her best friend's face for the first time. And Toru even burst into tears for a while. I didn't say much, not wanting to ruin the moment. But the rest of her class was reacting differently to her appearance. The girls were saying she looked cute, the guys were saying she was really pale. And Mineta, well, he was saying I should turn off her quirk while she's in hero costume. I decided to not let him speak for the rest of the class. Something that Tsuyu seemed to appreciate, as she's the one that always ends up having to bet him up. Overall, I now feel bad for forgetting about this beforehand. But I did it, so I now can cross this off my list and forget about it. Were my thought at the time. But since then, she's been asking me for help all the time. Either to train her or to help her take pictures in different clothing. I obviously helped her, mainly because I still felt bad for forgetting about her existence. And both she and Mina seemed to start hanging around me a lot more after that. They even joined me and my lackeys, Shinso and Naijuru, at our table. I guess having more friends doesn't hurt? Well, Rumi didn't really like me hanging around with other girls. But she didn't see high school students as competition since she knows my taste. Not much else happened besides that. Well, besides the guy in front of me. I was just going to another prefecture to buy Ari's favorite brand of chocolate milk, and I just saw this guy running along the streets. A 25-meter giant looking like a moving apartment complex. He has brown spiky hair, parts of his body seem jagged. His teeth are prominently pointed. He was the definition of a chiseled jawline. He also seemed a bit crazed. I remember him being called Gigantomachia in the series. He seemed to be heading in a pretty clear direction. A facility similar to Tartaro's, a prison for high-risk individuals. It also happened to be where Shigaraki is being detained. His intentions certainly aren't hard to guess. If I remember correctly, this guy was All for One's bodyguard. I wonder where he's been until now. He wasn't present when I killed All for One, and he wasn't in Kyudai's laboratory. Was this guy hibernating or something? How many man caves did All for One have? Regardless, I'll just capture this guy and ask him. Chapter 83, Gigantomachia and Mission. When Machia woke up, he was in the middle of a forest. He wasn't at his full height, only being around 4 meters now. He was confused and angry. His last memories were of seeing his master being killed on live television. Both him and Kyudai Garaki, the short doctor that kept All for One alive all of this time, were watching the television with grave expressions. Everything became a blur from there. Machia couldn't remember how he had gotten where he was. Machia was unable to do anything about the death of his master. He had been left to guard the laboratory. It was supposed to be in a forest, but it was different from the one he found himself in now. He remembered the trees being taller, the landscape a bit different. But there was something in front of him. On the ground, he could see a simple cassette tape. A portable player was near it. He figured that this might have been Kyudai's doing. He likely has a mission to do, since he wasn't near the place he was supposed to protect anymore. He slowly inserted the tape into the player, hoping to find information on his whereabouts and objective. The recording started as soon as he pressed the play button. Go to the Jigaku complex and break out Tamura Shigaraki. It was simple, short, not explaining anything about his current location. But it told him what he needed to do. Makia didn't believe Shigaraki was the best candidate when it came to a successor. But it was his late master's choice, not his own. The person speaking in the recording had a raspy voice, unknown to All for One's former bodyguard. It certainly wasn't Kyudai. But it was likely one of All for One's other servants. Makia quickly rose to the greatest height he could reach using his gigantification quirk. This way, he could look over the trees and observe his surroundings. He was not that far away from a city, likely to be in the vicinity of the Jigaku prison complex. He dug underneath the ground, making his way in the direction of the city. Doing so, he avoided gaining the attention of heroes, at least until he reached the city. Due to the infrastructure of cities, it was incredibly difficult to dig underneath them whilst remaining unnoticed. It took the giant around an hour to reach the city. He lowered his size back to 4 meters and stepped out of the ground right into a busy street. He asked around for some directions. The group he asked were intimidated by his appearance. But one person regained their composure quickly enough to point him in the right direction, albeit with a trembling hand. The giant thanked the civilians and went on his way. The complex was on the other exit of the town. All he needed to do was to walk in a straight line for around 12 kilometers. He managed to get around to the middle of the town before someone tried to stop him. It was a policeman, saying something about the suspicious appearance of the Makia. Now, Gigantomakia may not be as unintelligent as a regular Nomu, but he certainly didn't have much patience. Seeing that the policeman was interrupting his mission, he decided to rip the poor man in half. He did that right in the middle of the street. The people were quickly alarmed and everyone started panicking, which led to Makia getting even more annoyed. He quickly rose to his greatest height and started merely walking through the city, giving up on any notion of stealth. He tore through the buildings obstructing his path. His every step shook the city and cracked the streets, leaving heavy footprints into the asphalt. Some heroes tried to stop him, but they didn't even register in the giant's view. They were all crushed just like any civilian that found themselves standing in his way. Makia was almost at the exit of the city. He could already see the prison in the distance. But someone else appeared in front of him. His appearance further enraged the gigantic villain. Even when dressed in shorts and a flower-patterned t-shirt, with a black pair of flip-flops, the people around the scene could recognize him. It was the Yellow Flash. Even Gigantomakia recognized his face. He was not in hero costume, but it was hard to forget the face of the one that had killed his master. The hero looked up at him, giving him a lazy stare. "Aren't you a bit too brazen? Do you really think you can just waltz through a city? Underscore 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 POV Allan underscore 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 underscore." Gigantomakia just looked at me, growling like a mad beast. Does he recognize me? If so, I doubt I will be able to have much of a conversation with him. But fighting him here might cause a bit more destruction than I'd like, so I'll just move him away from here. I appeared in front of him, stomping his face and sending him flying into the forest behind him. It was also in the direction of the Jigaku prison, but he wouldn't get the chance to cause any more trouble. I looked at the giant in the distance. He now had a recognizable footprint on his forehead. It's great that I happen to be near this city, but I feel a bit bad for his victims. I think he left quite a few corpses in his wake. A lot of collapsed buildings too. I flashed near the head of the giant. He was already up on his feet, looking around confused. I just appeared on his shoulder and sat down a bit. "Say, who sent you here? I'm genuinely curious, what happened to this guy? I don't think he would go save Tamura out of his own will. He didn't exactly believe in him to become All for One's successor." Makia growled again. But he responded this time, "Everything is for my master." "Yeah, great. Your master is dead. Who gave you your orders?" He didn't respond this time. He tried to crush me with his hand. He only ended up hitting himself in the shoulder, the shockwave of which shook the entire forest. I just appeared on his elbow, right in front of his face. "Say, Do you really think you can fight me? As I talked, I stared him in his eyes. He wasn't intimidated by me, mainly because his hatred far outweighed his fear. But also because he is one of the strongest beings in this world. He shook his hand around a bit. I just flew above him and looked at him for a bit, wondering if there's any good way to capture and interrogate this person. Well, I wouldn't do the interrogation myself, I'd leave that to the professionals. Like the ones I could sense in the helicopters making their way to this location. They were filled with heroes and police from the surrounding cities. They mobilized a lot of people, it's probably why it took them a while to respond. There were also the news stations. There is no way these people would lose such a great headline. A villain attacking and destroying half a city as he makes his way towards a prison complex that detained high-risk individuals. The Jigaku prison complex was much like Tartaro's, but it was nowhere near as exclusive. There were 3 different underground levels. Each held villains of different rankings. The first floor held the C-ranked villains and below. The second floor holds only B-ranked villains and the third floor holds only A-ranked villains. S-ranked villains aren't being held in this facility. It was a simple setup. The safety protocols of the last floor were as good as those of Tartaro's. Shigaraki was likely confined on the last floor. Him not being an A-ranked villain wasn't important, he was a person of interest due to All for One's rescue attempt. Why didn't he do this earlier? Where was he when I attacked Kyudai's laboratory? A lot of questions were on my mind. And there's only one way to find the answers. Chapter 84, Capture and Distraction. Taking care of Gigantomachia was going to be a bit annoying. He should be able to break out of the restraints I put him in. Especially since he seems quite motivated. One of the quirks he has allows him to grow stronger the more motivated he is. I thought that since All for One died then he should be quite depressed. But it seems that most of his emotions are related to anger right now. And he's also probably motivated to kill me and avenge his master. As stupid as that is. Makia should be aware he's not as strong as his master. But he's still trying his best to fight me to the death. Although, realistically, he won't even be able to touch me. Not that his master was any different. They both seemed prepared to die, although, All for One was a bit more dangerous due to the whole Quirk stealing shtick. I floated above his head while letting my thought wander. I certainly didn't take him as seriously as I did his master. He quickly grew his teeth to great proportions. His jaw snapped at me as he jumped to reach me. His teeth passed right through me. I turned into light and reformed myself on his shoulder. I kicked him into the ground. He didn't fly too far off. Mainly because of his weight and size, but also because I didn't hit him as hard as I could. As he got up from the ground, he picked up a tree about as tall as him. He threw it at the approaching helicopters. It seems that both he and his master have similar strategies when it comes to distractions. I didn't bother to do anything about the tree, as the helicopters were also filled with capable heroes. No reason to waste my energy. MT Lady jumped out of one of the helicopters and grew to a size similar to that of the villain. She caught the tree in her hands. She was sent backwards, her feet dragging through the forest. She managed to push stop and push the tree away. Out of the helicopters came more and more heroes. People like Kamui Woods, who was a bit useless in this situation, I doubt will be able to hold down Gigantomachia in any capacity. Gang Orca was also here, so was Best Jeanist and Ed Shot. There were a lot more, but I'm not going to list them all. They really turned this into a group fight. But I guess they can hold their own, there's no reason to believe they would hold me back. Makia seemed angered by the interference of MT Lady, to the point where he momentarily forgot that I was here. I increased the size of my fist and punched square on the nose. He was a bit disoriented, but he didn't seem to register the pain. Another one of his annoying quirks. His hands quickly grew claws, similar to those of a mole. He swiped his hand at me with the greatest speed he could manage. Which was honestly not that great. I dashed in front of his face and drop-kicked him into the ground again. The problem is that he's really tanky. I could kill him, but then how would I learn about the new All-for-One's whereabouts? Kamui and Best Jeanist were quick to come near the downed opponent. One of them used their signature move, Lacquered Chain Prison, while the other tried to cover the giant in fabric. Makia shook his hand and punched the ground near the heroes. It sent both of them flying into the forest. Jeanist rotated into the air and stopped himself using some fabric from his jeans, while Kamui just used his wood to slow down his momentum. They didn't really get injured, but Kamui Woods got interrupted again. I have yet to see him successfully pull off that move. I'm sure he's quite discouraged by that. The giant villain got up and tried to pick up another tree. I decided to stop him from further endangering the weaker heroes. Kamui and the rest are all good enough, but there are some rookie heroes in those helicopters. People that were probably brought here to boost our numbers. I made it wrap themselves around Makia in an attempt to keep him down. His hands and feet were completely covered at this point, but he still struggled. Really, Midnight's Quirk would have been nice to have in this situation. MT Lady also came to help, attempting to restrain the giant in standing rear naked choke. She wasn't actually as big as Makia is, about 4 or 5 meters less in fact. He couldn't shake her off due to the chains pulling him to the ground, but she could still stall him for a bit. He was quickly brought to his knees by my chains. I quickly rose spikes out of the ground, impaling his feet into it, stopping right before they touched MT Lady. The villain grew his bones exponentially, spikes came out of his back and attempted to stab MT Lady, who still hadn't let go of the chokehold. I didn't know he could do something. I remembered him being able to grow the size of his bones. But it doesn't matter much. I obviously wouldn't let that happen. I created a huge light shield. It started cracking quickly, but it bought MT Lady enough time to turn back to regular size to avoid the bone spikes. I caught her while she was falling, pulling her away from the rapidly approaching spikes. She thanked me loudly. I used the chains on his hands to pull him backwards, making his chest face upwards, preparing something nice for him. Although he trashed around and managed to break free from the chains holding his hands, more just came to replace them. His frustration should be really high right now. "Hey! Can you prepare for a heavy landing?" I said with a devious smile. She looked up at me, confused, then her eyes widened a bit. I took her into the clouds and threw her towards Makia as he stood with his feet impaled into the ground. She quickly grew in size, with her feet aiming towards Makia's chest as she screamed and cursed me. I didn't take it to heart. Her landing was rough, but it was a lot worse for Makia than it was for her. He was pushed into the ground. The spikes on that grew out of his spine made him stuck to the ground. The impact caused a great shockwave. It shook the entire forest and created a crater big enough to fit Makia in it, with room to spare. I'm quite sure it broke a few of Makia's ribs. It was a great hit, straight to the point too. I think MT Lady injured one of her ankles a bit. She went back to her regular size and I quickly went to pull her away from the giant villain. I doubt he's already knocked out. If she aimed for his head then maybe he'd be, but this is good enough. Best Jeanist and Kamui got to work quickly, both of them entangling Makia in a great amount of wood and cloth. She looked up at me. "What the fuck was that?" she asked, enraged by how I treated her. Although, I think she's still quite pleased. That attack was witnessed by a lot of people. It will raise her popularity quite a bit. I bet she'll call it something stupid, like Star Cannon or something like that. Oh well, I hope Rumi won't get mad that I have a combination move with MT Lady and not with her. I also promised her to keep it easy with the hero work. That's 2 things she can beat me around for. I could feel my watch vibrating angrily as my forehead started to fill with sweat. It seems that Rumi's watching television. I quickly took MT Lady to a helicopter and landed. I responded as quickly as I could. Yes. I tried not to show any fear. I think that's what you're supposed to do when faced with a predator. Sir! Are you the Yellow Flash? I guess I should start looking at the number before responding. This wasn't Rumi's phone. He also seemed quite young, probably a fan or something. But his voice sounded a bit panicked. Yeah, what happened? My curiosity got the better of me. As I spoke to this person, Makia started trying to get up. He started shaking his hands in an attempt to break all of the wood and fabric holding him down. But I just raised a few more light spikes out of the ground, piercing his hands and legs in more places and making sure he wouldn't be able to move. Villains have attacked UA. What? Chapter 85, Objectives and Confusion. Walking to UA wasn't exactly something I got used to. Sure, I've been working here for about a year, and I've been teaching here for a few weeks. But it still feels a bit strange. It shouldn't feel strange. I've long come to accept my current condition. As helpless as I feel from time to time, my time is running out. The fact that I'm teaching at UA signifies that I already started relying on the next generation. Young Midoriya is still growing and, by Gran Torino's words, his progress is steady and plentiful at the same time. For me, it's hard to gauge it properly, since I never had problems controlling one for all. There's also my colleague, young Allan. He is a strange person. Without a doubt powerful, I still have some difficulties keeping a straight face when speaking to him. His age has stopped bothering me at this point, since we've been working for a year already. But his strength is simply inhuman. He could handle All for One so easily. It was simply terrifying. But I also regret feeling this way about it. He isn't the type of person that would ever hurt anyone innocent. All for One's Quirk still being around is also not a calming thought. All for One's actions that day were extremely strange. Allan might not realize this since he doesn't know the villain. But I can tell. He was acting strangely the entire fight. At any point, he could have tried to teleport away. As for rescuing the person in the armored car, I'm sure All for One would never care more for another person than he would for his own life. He went out that day prepared to die. And he tried to take down Allan as well. Using that strange drug was a desperate move, but the villain was trying to ensure that Allan would die that day. I still don't understand All for One's motives completely. But that person is always planning something. A frontal assault simply isn't his style. No, I should stop worrying about the dead. His quirk is the only thing I need to worry about now. Since another person already inherited it, it means another powerful villain for us to worry about. Whoever that person is, they need to be either captured or taken down. In the past, I would never accept the notion of killing a villain. All for One was different. I was driven by revenge. But nowadays, I think that sometimes it's safer to make sure some villains aren't allowed to live. It might be due to the influence Allan has on me. Allan himself doesn't care much for the lives of villains, but he doesn't kill needlessly. The thing that makes him even more different from me is that he doesn't seem to hesitate when taking a life. Both the bridge incident and his fight with All for One showed me that he wasn't bothered by displaying his strength in that way. Well, he certainly doesn't ever act bothered after taking a life. But all of his psychological tests had come out normal. There was nothing wrong with him in that sense. If there was, he wouldn't have been allowed to become a hero. I still don't know what to think about that aspect of his. In a way, it's good for him to be decisive. But someone as young as him being so. While deep in thought, I managed to reach the door to Nizu's office. Nizu himself also has many of my worries. But he seems to be able to calm himself down much more easily. I entered and had my usual conversation with Nizu, talking about classes and students. Right now, I have to teach Class 1B. I'll likely do team fights again. It's a good enough exercise, and they've also been improving a lot. Right now, I dressed in my hero costume and headed out to their classroom, only buffing up when reaching the hallway that had their classroom. Thankfully, the hallways are always empty now. I am here to teach you about teamwork. It doesn't matter how many times I do it. People still get excited when seeing it. I didn't waste much time and told them to wear their hero costumes. We all met at the bus taking us to the exam site. That's when it happened. A black portal appeared in the middle of the road in front of the bus. The students, that were assembling in an orderly line, were all startled and recoiled backwards. This warp quirk looks exactly like the one at USJ. I have seen the recordings of that incident. But the one who used it had been put in a coma and captured by Allan. He was put under heavy restraints and the police made sure he was guarded. That meant they must have attacked the hospital recently. Out of the portal came a strange man wearing a suit. He had white hair and eyes, well-defined jawline, and an appropriately sized nose. The smoke forming the portal came from his sleeves. As he stepped out, more and more people started coming out. There were 7 of them in total. They all looked strange. They were certainly villains. I could recognize 1 or 2 people. One of them was a politician even. This was not going to be a pleasant situation. The other was the CEO of a company somewhere in this prefecture. The rest weren't people I recognized. They all looked strong in their own right. These were people that students should be facing. But the situation got even worse. Out of the portal came hundreds and hundreds of villains. This wasn't looking too good. Underscore 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 POV narration underscore 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 underscore. The alarm quickly went off, alerting every single teacher and student about the emergency. The teachers should be busy evacuating the students for now. Nisa should have pulled the camera feed already. He should be able to see what's happening clearly. But, for some reason, all phone communications were cut off. Nisa tried different means of contacting other heroes, but he couldn't do much from his desk. They also took down the internet shortly after. In the end, all of the teachers needed to help protect the students that couldn't make it in time to evacuate. Majima quickly released all of the zero-pointers and exam robots he had at his disposal. He made them occupy the weaker villains. This was a temporary solution at best. All Might was currently fighting 5 of the stronger-looking people. They were likely leaders of this group. The one in the suit stood back, observing the situation and transporting more and more villains to this place. They were likely reaching 1,000 at this point. The leaders all looked strange. One of them seemed to have dead skin attached to his body, while another was wearing a stylish coat with a black top hat, a feather sticking out of it. Another had some type of ice manipulation quirk. He was wearing a heavy coat in autumn. One had long black hair. He seemed to be able to shape objects into humans and manipulate them. Those 4, alongside the CEO and the politician, who were both just riling up the crowd of fighting villains. All Might seemed to be having some trouble, but he managed to hold back the villains enough to let the students escape. The one in the suit didn't seem all too interested in the students, not even glancing at them. The students still needed to fight their way out of the bigger villain group. They were outnumbered to horrible proportions. Ibara and Naijuru were doing fine, so was Tetsu and Monoma. Most students were fighting with surprising skill. One of them softened up the ground and caught about 100 villains in his makeshift swamp. His quirk was great for this situation since the villains were all packed together. All of the students together managed to break out of the encirclement. But the symbol of peace was having a rough time. While he could handle the fire and ice, he was starting to get a bit annoyed at the number of puppets one of them was creating. The one with the feathered hat also couldn't get too close. The shockwaves were pushing, keeping him at bay. The CEO also decided to step into the fight. His hand turned black and enlarged and he swiped it at All Might, who just punched it away. But that gave an opening to the villain wielding fire to burn the back of the symbol of peace. Thankfully, the suit he was wearing was somewhat resistant to heat. And the cape was made out of a great insulator. It made his costume hard to burn and by extension, his skin too. The man in the suit was just staring at All Might. He seemed to be analyzing the situation. While the leaders were fighting All Might, the teachers were starting to head towards their location. Aizawa saw Monoma running in the opposite direction. He quickly threw his phone at the student. "Call Allan quickly." Since the students were heading away from the site, they should also leave the area with the jammer. Everything will be fine if he gets here in time, was the thought going through his head. He already knew that Allan was preoccupied with the giant villain he was apprehending. but that had never stopped him from responding to other calls. Now, all they needed to do was hold until the reinforcements arrived. Chapter 86, Desperation and Call. By now, most students have already left the school grounds. Most of them were still hoping this was a drill. But since every teacher was currently running towards the place, you can guess just how much that made them panic. Right now, all Hero Course students from Year 2 and 3 were debating going back in and helping. All of them had provisional licenses, so they decided to go in. They didn't fully know the situation, but it didn't seem ordinary, as the teachers all seemed to be panicking to some extent. But while they were debating whether to go in or not, a few hundred villains made their way to the gates. This was bad news for the students. It meant that the teachers were losing. The Hero Course students quickly intercepted them, Shoto managing to flash freeze at least 100 of them in an instant. Although, he needed to take a break to defrost afterwards. Bakugo also decided to jump in the middle of them and blow up everything he could see. Meanwhile, Nijire blew a lot of them away with a few well-placed waves. Tamaki also started smashing away at them with his tentacles. Mirio was like a naked mole, phasing in and out of the ground and taking villains by surprise. With all of the students present, led by the Big Three, they managed to defeat the group of villains quite easily. Most of the fearful students had already run off. Some were still trying to run out of the Jammer Quirk's range. The students of the Hero Course decided to go in, especially since the teachers were likely getting overwhelmed by the attackers. And they weren't wrong. The situation was looking a lot worse for the teachers. They were currently surrounded by thousands of villains. The size of the army of villains was unreal, to the point where the heroes were even needed to fight, although he didn't do so directly, only resorting to manually controlling the jam defense system. The teachers were all getting pressured. Midnight's suit was already mostly ripped. The teachers were all wearing special masks to resist her aroma. She managed to put to sleep quite a few of them. Snipe was even running out of bullets at this point. Cementos also wasn't having it easy. Bringing buildings down on villains left him exhausted. Mick's throat was already hurting badly. Vlad was almost passing out. Out of every single robot that Majima released, only the 0-pointers were still holding on. But they were all getting swarmed by villains. Aizawa was stuck assisting All Might, who was currently injured. The man in the suit also decided to join the fight sometime before. He seemed to be taunting All Might. He had released a few air cannons towards the hero every time he got close to defeating an opponent. In a sense, the student saved the day in that situation, as explosions and flames broke through the encirclement of the villains. Shoto obviously decided to use his flames without holding back. This wasn't the time where he could play around. He and Bakugo were the ones with the most explosive entrances. Nijire was also crushing villains into the ground with her waves. Not everyone had quirks suited for group fights, so they couldn't get that many of them. While the Hero Course students were coming to the aid of the teachers, Monoma was running away at great speeds. He had copied Ida's quirk to increase the ground he could cover. His calves were already burned badly by the motors, but he still kept running and dialing the number Aizawa gave him. He was doing his best to complete the task that the teacher had given him. All Might already has a hunch as for who the person leader of these people is. The signature air cannon gave it away. He was clearly All for One's inheritor. The person they were fearing came at the worst time possible. No one was expecting this attack. Niza might have said that such a thing was possible, but no one thought they would attack it twice in a row. They certainly had an objective here. And by the intensity of which they were attacking All Might, it was quite clear that their reasons for coming here had something to do with him. They were likely after his life, to succeed where the short-lived League of Villains had failed. All for One's inheritor decided to finally get this over with, his fingers turning black and extending into the back of the symbol of peace. While that happened, the blue fire-wielding villain decided to release another concentrated stream of fire towards the hero. But he didn't manage to do anything of the sort, as Aizawa cancelled his quirk. The puppet-making villain also had his quirk cancelled for 1 second, turning every doll into unmoving statues that the villain needed to touch again. The one with the feathered hat was restrained by Aizawa when he first arrived here. Cementos was also quick to encase him in cement. Snipe also managed to shoot down the politician. He was hiding in a crowd and enticing the villains. But Snipe found him easily due to his strange equipment. That mask that was enhancing the volume of his voice. That was at least 2 of the leaders down. But the others were still just as annoying. The CEO was one of the more annoying ones. Right now, his entire body was black and bulging with muscles. He took quite a few punches from All Might, but he kept getting up. But now that the one in the suit got involved, the situation turned even worse. The students and teachers were holding on against the thousands of villains that were still coming out of the portal, but All Might was already getting tired. Having his back pierced certainly didn't help. How unsightly of you, All Might. His tone was familiar to the hero. It held a strange hatred and familiarity. Who are you? What is your objective? Asked All Might, wanting to confirm his suspicion. How sad. You can't even recognize me anymore? Did you think I'd die so easily? All Might's face instantly turned white. This wasn't just All for One's inheritor, this was All for One himself. His voice had changed, so did his body, but the way he spoke remained the same. The problem here was that All for One was now healthy, whilst he was still injured and on a timer. As to how exactly All for One managed to remain alive after all of that? It's hard to tell, but if All Might were to guess, it probably had something to do with All for One's quirk being transferred to this person. Things were looking worse and worse. But not for long. As Monoma finally managed to get outside the range of the jammer quirk. He was quite a few kilometers away from UA. His legs were charred by the amount of heat the engines exuded. But he managed to make the phone call in the end. Chapter 87, Struggle and Arrival. What do you mean? Who is attacking it? How many villains are there? I asked in a hurried tone. They came out of a portal. There was a quirk interfering with phone signals. I ran away to call you, but villains were still coming out when I left. The voice sounded tired and desperate. Okay, I'll be there soon. I'll just wrap things up here. You should rest for now, I said in a resolute tone. I could just hear a sigh of relief right before I hung up. I certainly wasn't expecting the phone call. If UA is being attacked, I should probably hurry up. Makia was nowhere near done. Since MT Lady at most only broke a few bones with her dropkick. I could see him breaking his restraints. Even the light spikes staking him to the ground were cracking. But I don't have any more time to play around with him. I flew up and waved my hand at him, sending 4 flying blades of light directed at his limbs. He had no way to actually dodge them. He didn't have much speed. At least not compared to me. His limbs were quickly cut off, leaving him with only a torso and his head. All we need for interrogation. Best Jeanist and Kamui looked shocked at the way I handled this. UA is being attacked. I'll have to go. You guys deal with stuff here. Saying that, I quickly departed, sending 4 lasers towards the bleeding stumps of the giant villain. Burying the wounds closed with surgical precision. It's just to make things easier for the people apprehending him, since he doesn't have any regeneration quirks. I made it to UA in less than a second. I could see a lot of people running in the opposite direction. I could also sense a group made out of students and teachers trying to hold on against thousands of villains. The one that called me likely ran away early on. He didn't realize the number of villains would grow to this size. Most of the students were injured. Some of them were unconscious. Bakugo was out of the fight. He looked dehydrated. Shoto was still freezing and burning villains, with sweat covering his body. Izuku was trying his best to dwindle the number of villains. But more and more were coming out of the portal. Naijuru was breaking necks and trying his best to keep the villains away from their circle. Shinso was controlling Giton, the ice quirk user of the Paranormal Liberation Front. Although, I don't really know what they call themselves now. There's less of them, and Redestro and Trumpet, the CEO, and the politician were both acting weirdly. Almost robotic. All of the former high-ranking members of the Meta Liberation Army were acting the same. Ochako and Ito were down for the count. Tsuyu was pulling the downed students back in the circle. So was Tamaki. Mina threw her acid towards the large mob of villains while Toru was sneaking between them. A bit dangerous, but Toru was a bit outside her range. Nijire was still flying around. Some parts of her suit were ripped and there were cuts on her skin. Mirio seemed tireless, flying out of the ground and beating up villains left and right. Tetsu and Kirishima were somehow still holding on. Their endurance is better than a lot of their classmates. The teachers were no better than them. Vlad was missing a hand, but still fighting with fervor. Mick's throat was bleeding, his vocal cords weren't exactly intact. Midnight was also in a dire state. Most male villains couldn't really get close to her. But since her allies were near her, she couldn't use her aroma effectively. Though, the teachers were wearing protective gear against that. Cementos was downed. He was missing both an arm and a leg. Snipe was in melee mode, he was clearly out of ammunition. Recovery Girl was running around left and right, trying her best to stabilize everyone's condition. 13 was still holding on, mainly because she was ripping apart any villain in front of her, to the point where they were afraid to come near her. But she seemed to be frantic and scared. She doesn't really like harming people, but she's a hero, so she'll be fine either way. I could also see hundreds of destroyed robots littering the ground, including zero-pointers. Aizawa was likely in the worst state out of all of them. His body was covered in burns. Both of his arms were broken, with bones sticking out of them. One of his legs were crushed and one of his eyes were gouged out. Overall, the situation was looking a lot worse than I had anticipated. It was infuriating to see all of my friends and colleagues in this state. The villains stopped coming out of the portal, but there were around 20,000 of them, excluding the ones that were taken down by the students and teachers. Then there was All Might. He was missing an arm, and he was out of gas, reverting to his weakened state. Thankfully, the students couldn't really see him properly, at least not all of them. It would have made them lose all of their morale. The white-haired man in front of him seemed to be the cause of that. I could see his hand swell up, about to release an air cannon right into All Might's chest. I flew in front of him, kicking him away into a random building. It was one of the gyms of this school. It seemed to collapse on top of him. I looked at All Might. "I'll take it from here." He looked up at me, eyes regaining their vitality. "He's all for one." He was tired, he simply fainted after saying those words. I guess he was in no state to fight a revived all for one. I could hear Nijire screaming, "Allan is here." Most of the students that were still awake seemed to calm down a bit. I quickly picked up All Might and flew in their direction. I think he already lost one for all. He needs to get there to get checked out by Recovery Girl. The students saw me carrying a skinny man that was wearing All Might's costume. They seemed a bit confused, but most of them released a sigh of relief when seeing me. Izuku seemed horrified at All Might's appearance. So did most teachers that were awake. The villains seemed to have a different reaction compared to the students, most of them looking fearful and recoiling at my sudden appearance. I looked over the students and what remained of the teachers. "You all should rest." I pulled every single person back into the circle they had formed using light tentacles. I created clones and made them carry off the more critically injured students and teachers. I'll have to make these third-rate villains pay for what they've done. I don't plan on holding back at all. Chapter 88, The Army. Looking around, there were a lot of villains to deal with. Some people I could recognize, like Dobby and even some of the lieutenants of the Paranormal Liberation Front. Even Mr. Compress was around, but he was already dealt with by the teachers. Keaton, the ice user wearing a heavy winter coat, also was captured by Shinso. He first brainwashed him. Then Juzo, of Class 1B, softened the ground to the point where only his head was left outside. So that was 3 people taken care of. Him, Trumpet, who is the politician that can incite people, and Mr. Compress. The guy in a suit, who All Might called All for One before fainting, was still under the collapsed gym. At least that's what my perception tells me. Although, I'm sure he's gotten Kurogiri's warp gate quirk. Kurogiri still hasn't woken up since Shigaraki's capture and the former All for One's fall. I had my doubts that All for One was well and truly dead. But now I can be quite sure. This guy has supposedly just inherited that quirk for a few weeks at most. If he wasn't the original All for One, then arranging all of this in less than a week would have been impossible. Still, I can't really remember if he had any quirk to help him with that. Or maybe the original All for One carries his consciousness, much like One for All carries the consciousness of every person that held it. Regardless, I'll make sure that he dies today. Again. There were also some people I can't really recognize. It can't be helped, after all, this wasn't supposed to be the time they were introduced. It's also quite clear that they weren't as big as in the show. I remember they were supposed to have around 100,000 members, with Shigaraki leading them all. Now they were around 22,000, it's quite surprising that the teachers and students could deal with 2,000 villains. But enough about that, I don't really have enough time to reminisce about the way the events were supposed to happen before my interference. I could sense All for One teleporting out of the wreckage of the collapsed building. He was now somewhere above the rest of the villains, looking down at me. I decided to ignore him for now, I'll deal with him later. I want to deal with the small fry first. I look at the group of villains as light engulfed me. It was like a blinding flash of light, out of it I came wearing my costume. Although it was made out of solid light. It was only flexible because I controlled it while moving. So, why is none of you guys attacking me? I asked towards the group of villains. They seemed to recoil at that question. If some of them didn't recognize me without my suit, then they definitely did now. You all seemed quite eager when fighting the students and outnumbered teachers. Where's your courage now? I asked with a sarcastic smile on my face. One lieutenant decided to speak up. He was skeptic, the person that can create and control human-shaped puppets. He's only one person. There is nothing to fear. He tried to calm down their army. Redestro was too stressed out to give a speech right now. That's how his quirk worked, his body turned black when faced with certain negative emotions. Right now, his entire body was black. So he was in no state to give a speech about anything. Dobby seemed to want to get rid of me and the remaining people. He tried to release a stream of blue fire in our direction. But such an attack wouldn't work too well, I didn't even have to do anything, 13 just absorbed it all with one hand. I guess she's a great reason as to why they were able to hold on for so long. Most ranged attacks are nullified by her. Her costume was made to withstand great temperatures, so it wasn't in any danger of breaking apart. Although the attack failed, the rest of the villains were still encouraged by it. It seems that action is a great motivator for them. I guess I should also act then. Out of me came about 100 clones. Each of them grew to immense sizes. I gave them the shape of the parent again. But I made them twice the size as last time. I wasn't exactly planning on trying to capture all of them. If they survived, that's fine, but if they died, tough luck. I don't care. The giants moved at speeds impossible to replicate by either the regular members or the lieutenants. They weren't dealing with students on the entrance exam, so there was no need to go easy on anyone. The only person I'll leave alive purposefully is Dobby. Mainly because I want Endeavor to get a wake-up call. The giants all smashed their fists into the ground, creating a shockwave so strong that they blew away most of the surrounding buildings. Most of them were already in disrepair due to the constant fighting. But now there wasn't even any sign of rubble. I also created a screen of see-through light to protect us from it. The giants only needed around 3 seconds to wipe out over half of their numbers. Lieutenants or not, if they were in the range of the giants they were as good as dead. The speed at which they moved outside their teleportation was also almost instant. It gave their attacks a lot more weight. It was to the point where they were creating earthquakes. They kept teleporting around and smashing the ground repeatedly, without any care for the ants they were stepping on and crushing under their fists. All for One tried to stop them. He released air cannons left and right. But all of his attacks just passed through the giants. So did the attacks of anyone that could react in time. I made the giants purposefully ignore the old villain. He doesn't really like being disregarded, but he should be used to it. I don't plan on giving him any respect. All for One still didn't try to escape. Which only means that he still has something up his sleeve. I wouldn't have let him get away regardless. To form a gate and pass through it takes around 1 second. 1 second is more than enough time for me to dismember and impale him repeatedly. I never displayed my true speed while fighting him in the past. I mostly kept myself to his level. But I don't feel like doing that today. The regular members of the army were quick to fall. None of them was strong enough to withstand more than one hit from the giants. This was no longer a fight, it was a massacre. A just one. Chapter 89, Timely Arrival and Plan? By the time I and the rest of the students got here, the situation already looked bad. There's no doubt on my mind that the villains are playing around with the teachers. If they all attack together, there would be no way for them to hold on for so long. Or maybe it's the combination of Midnight's aroma and 13's black hole that kept them away. Synopsis was also really efficient in capturing the villains without body-strengthening quirks. There were too many of them. All Might wasn't in our line of sight. But he's definitely fighting, we can hear and feel the shockwaves coming from their direction. Only the flying senior could see them properly. Although she was a bit busy pushing villains away and crushing them into the ground. Keeping our ground was really important right now, we don't have a way of knowing how many of them there are. They also keep coming out of that portal. It's eerily similar to the one from USJ. But I thought he was apprehended. We still can't contact anyone with our phones. Some of us still keep trying to call the police. But it seems like we still haven't found the person jamming the signal. Maybe it's a piece of equipment? But you would need something big to cover the entire school grounds. All we can see are villains, no equipment besides weapons and some armor. The first years seem to be holding on. Most of us are just using the line of defense of the teachers to take potshots at the villains. It won't work forever. When they realize that Midnight can't really use her quirk as effectively, they will attack again. But that weakness won't exist for long. Momo has already started making gas masks for every student present. That, coupled with putting up shields around some of the parts we can't cover properly, pretty much takes her out of the fight. She's already stretching the limits of the number of lipids she should be consuming. But, for now, we need to hold on. Monoma is still running away to call Allan. Allan's ability is really great against big numbers of tightly packed opponents. Ida volunteered to go and call him, but Monoma told him to remain here and help the others. There wasn't much time to speak, as he just copied Ida's quirk and ran off. Many things happened, our line of defense shrunk further and further. Midnight could only release so much aroma, at this point, she was on her last breath. The rest of the teachers were all hurt seriously. The villains were like a pack of hyenas, all it took was a second's distraction, and they pounced with a hunger that managed to scare some of the students away. Not everyone remained in our circle. Even with the efforts of the upper-class students and Suyu, many of the students panicked and ran off. We don't know what happened to them. Synopsis was already down. We couldn't do anything besides separate the villains from him and pull him in our circle. Aoyama can no longer shoot lasers, he's bleeding a lot too. He overused his quirk to this point. Shoji had 3 of his arms cut off, 2 other were broken. Aizawa is already on his last breath. Just as the villains were about to push us and break the last of our defenses. Our flying senior shouted, "Allan's here." It was all it took, all of us were motivated even further. In the next seconds, we could hear a powerful bang. Then Allan came into our view, he isn't looking lax like usual. I have never seen him like this before. He may not realize this. But he looks a lot more bloodthirsty than the most heinous villain in that army. His bloodthirst seems even stronger than Stain's. The villains certainly felt it too, some of them almost fainted from it. But, seeing All Might in that state made my stomach churn. He was filled with injuries, missing an arm, his body covered in blood. I was left speechless. Allan was quick to take all of the severely injured people away from this place. It was almost like they teleported away. Then the fight restarted. It was no longer dominated by the villains. Allan seemed to change into his costume instantly. The giants he created this time were a lot bigger than the ones in the entrance exam. They were also much faster. I couldn't even follow them with my eyes. As soon as the fight started, it also ended. It was so quick, it was almost funny. Although most of us were glad, we couldn't bring ourselves to celebrate. Most were too tired for that. Most of us also saw the state of the symbol of peace, although it didn't register for everybody yet. Some of the students obviously realized it. Then the leader seemed to appear in front of Allan, signifying that this battle wasn't over yet. Underscore 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 POV Allan underscore 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 underscore. By the time All for One landed in front of me, most of his army was gone. Either unconscious, dead, or on their way there. Dobby was the only one that I purposefully kept alive. All for One didn't look too panicked by the way his army fell. It was a bit odd. Even if his plan didn't include the giant army of villains, it still took some effort to gather that many people. Although, he didn't really gather them himself. I looked him in the eyes. If it isn't the walking corpse. Have you come to die again? Or maybe you have different plans? I said mockingly. The only reason I'm even speaking to this scum is to calm myself a bit. My anger is still in full throttle. And I reckon it's about to get a lot worse. The one dying this time will be you. Sure thing, idiot, keep dreaming. So, what's your plan exactly? I asked, my mocking smile never leaving my face. Well, it's quite simple really. He took out a phone and showed me a video. I can only assume it's a live feed. It showed a darkened room. Tied to a chair was the figure of a beaten and unconscious woman. Her hair was white, her skin was tanned. She was missing her rabbit ears. Her quirk was quite interesting. She put up quite a fight against my subordinates. He kept going, but I was no longer listening to anything he said. Rumi is strong, she should be fine. Were always my thoughts. No. I shouldn't feel responsible for this. She would likely take it as an insult. But why didn't she try to give a signal or anything? Jammer Quirk. The same one that attacked Tartaros. Regardless of how he did this. A lot of revenge is in order. I'm sure she's not going to have anything against that. Chapter 90, Rescue and Beatdown. I stared at the man in front of me. He was likely hoping for me to fly into a rage and attack him, leaving myself open. Even if I did attack him, he wouldn't be able to react in time to counter me. So, that's your plan? I was wondering why you were so confident in yourself. I said through gritted teeth. Restraining myself is a bit hard, but if I could find out where Rumi is, then I can rescue her quickly. If you attack me or try to stop me in any capacity, I will give you an option, hero. You will either choose to save the one you love, or the people you are protecting right now, he said with a devious smile on his face. I guess I can't really react in any other way now. I was curious about where his confidence came from, but it seems he just thinks he's invincible. Him attacking Rumi is something he will die for, but now he's also using her as a bargaining chip, which is just insulting to her as a hero. It also seems that he has taken her quirk away. Something I don't want to think about right now. 30 seconds. That's all the time you have left to choose. I will attack the students after that. If you intercept me, then the person you love most will die. He looked so smug while explaining his master plan. Too bad he's nothing but a wrinkly old fuck desperately clinging to his life. He said he'd wait 30 seconds. Well, all I need is 3. I disappeared in the eyes of the students and the villain. In 1 second, I circled the country of Japan about 7 times. my perception covering the maximum range I could handle without fainting. The amount of information entering my head was hard to imagine. It was hard to filter it out. Having a body certainly isn't fun sometimes. I found Rumi eventually. She was in a random warehouse on the other side of the country. She was still unconscious. Her injuries were heavy, but not life-threatening. All for One took care that she wouldn't die so he could use her as a captive. The same warehouse, there was 2 other people. One of them was a reporter that used to be a leader of the Meta Liberation Army. Her quirk should be something to do with explosions, can't really remember every detail about her. She did appear in some of the worlds I observed during my time in the starfield. That's the only reason I still know some of the people around in this world. Although, I didn't really bother remembering just about everybody. Like the person that was by her side. He was quite tall, with well-defined muscles. His costume isn't really that reminiscent of a villain's. He was wearing a purple, skin-tight bodysuit with black arrow-like markings across his chest, around his waist, and down the center of his thighs. It was a weird costume. He was also wearing a small cape. I didn't really have time to waste on either of them. I just smashed them into the ground and encased Rumi in a ball of light. I placed All for One subordinates in front of the camera and melted them together. I then quickly took off, flying away with Rumi to the nearest hospital. As much as I want to stay with her, I still needed to run back and kill All for One. Not even 3 seconds have passed, but he should have realized that I was up to something. And would you look at that? I was right. When I arrived, he was just about to release an air cannon towards the tired students and teachers. They had little ways to dodge that attack. Me appearing in front of it was not a difficult task. Putting up a giant barrier was also instant. His plan apparently relied on me being a lot slower than I actually am. He looked at me with a bit of frustration. I guess he hasn't realized just how grave the situation is for him. Is that it, old guy? Did you have enough fun yet? I said in a simple tone. Although I didn't put much of an effort into hiding the anger in my expression. He had the gall to snort in my direction. It seems that getting rid of you will be a bit harder. You even gave up on your loved ones. His face showed scorn. I'll let him finish speaking before wiping that smugness off of his face. Say, how does it feel? Knowing that the person you love most is dying and you cannot do anything about it? His smile was really demented. He's likely under the impression that he will still be able to escape regardless of what happens. Either relying on Kurogiri's warp gate or on his other teleportation quirks. Otherwise, he wouldn't even try to pull off this stunt. He's trying to make me suffer as payback for me humiliating and killing him on live television. He seemed to be waiting for an anguished response from me. But I just smiled. Why don't you try looking at that live feed for a second time? He looked confused for a second. But that confusion instantly turned into panic. He probably wasn't expecting this type of outcome. This can't be. You can even warp? His confusion wasn't gone completely, it seems. Although I could see him preparing to warp away. I appeared in front of him, not giving him any time to react. Spikes started coming out of my body, easily impaling him. But that wasn't all. I used that second of shock to grab him by the neck and throw him in the air. The spikes remained lodged in his body, not giving him the opportunity to heal properly. I hope you weren't expecting to leave this place alive, I said in a dark tone. I don't really care whether or not I look like a hero in front of the students anymore. He is going to die. This wasn't debatable. It's impossible to make him give Rumi her quirk back. Asking that would just make him try to use it against me. I'll have to ask scientists to make a proper copy of his DNA after his death. I'll try to tell them as much as I know of Kyudai's methods. It's a sorry attempt at giving Rumi her quirk back, but it's all I've got now. He seemed to have given up on simply escaping. He stopped in midair and faced me. He looked quite angry, but that little frustration he's feeling is only the beginning. His fingers turned black and extended in my direction. I just appeared above him, both of his hands fell off, cleanly cut off by the light around them. I also punched him into the ground, not using much of my speed in the attack. But it was still enough to form a small crater and raise a cloud of dust around him. I could hear him laugh a bit. It seems that I am physically stronger than you. My stamina is also much better. He was about to continue. But I wasn't planning on listening to his bullcrap. Shut up. I'm really not interested in this conversation. He scowled a bit. But, are you sure you are stronger than me? I asked him in a straightforward manner. It seems you aren't that perceptive. In a head-on confrontation, I would overpower you easily. He was trying to wind me up, hoping that I would start fighting like All Might. Well, if that's what he wants. Speed is weight. I appeared in front of him, raising my leg to the side. Have you ever experienced light speed kick? I said with a lazy smile. I replaced my leg with a light construct. I brought my leg into his face at the greatest speed I could. He was sent flying off, almost turning into a laser himself. I could see that his head was completely caved in. But he won't die just from that. I'll let him recover a bit. After all, I've only just begun. Chapter 91, One-Sided? I looked at All for One, as his head regenerated to its usual shape. The shockwave of my kick blew away every dead or knocked out villain from around us, leaving us with some open space. The students and teachers remaining were also pushed back by it. Most of them seemed to have already relaxed after seeing my first exchange with All for One. Mirio even sat on the ground and breathed a sigh of relief. Nijire was the same, she lay on the ground like it was a comfortable bed. She must have used her quirk a lot, her stamina was pretty much depleted. The students were all starting to imitate Mirio and Nijire, realizing that the situation was pretty much done. It would have been better if they evacuated this place. But I'm guessing they are too tired for that. The majority of them seem on the verge of passing out. Not that it matters, All for One barely seems to be able to think straight. He just tried to sneak off by using one of his warp quirks. But I just fired a laser at him and blew him away. Somehow, I still feel that he has something up his sleeve. I just doubt he would have shown up with just that. Not that it matters. All for One, why aren't you fighting back? Didn't you claim to be stronger than me? I asked him in a mocking tone. He didn't react much. His mind must be going on overdrive, thinking of ways to escape. I appeared in front of him once more. This time, I just turned my hand into a laser and pierced his left lung, burning the wound closed as my fist passed through it, making him unable to heal it. After taking my hand out, I could see that he was swinging his at me. I didn't even bother dodging, he was too slow after all. Before his hand even got close to hitting me, I kicked him in the chin, sending him flying upwards. After all, even with all of the physical boosting quirks he has gathered, he could still only reach a tenth of the speed of light. And that was with Trigger. Which is impressive, sure. But it's nowhere near enough to even touch me, let alone fight me. I don't feel like showing off today, last time was more of a ceremony than a fight too. This is more akin to torture. While he was in midair, I appeared behind him. My leg was already preparing to kick him back into the ground. His body barely reacted at all, although I could see his eyes following my leg, looking on helplessly. He likely has a quirk similar to Niza's high spec, allowing him to think faster than he can move. It usually means he can respond better during fights. But it's quite useless now. I could see traces of reactions, but they were so delayed they might as well not have been there. He was sent flying towards the ground. Anyone else would have died just from the speed he's traveling with, but he can survive it. I let him have a soft landing on the cold concrete. Soft as in it shook the ground like an earthquake and fragmented it to the point where it was unrecognizable, creating a crater big enough to fit 100 more All for Ones. There weren't a lot more villains flying away due to the shockwaves, most of the villains were already blown away earlier. I also kicked him away from the students, to affect them less. I let All for One recover slowly. Every time he attempted to use any type of warp quirk, one of his hands would be blown away or he would be impaled on a spike. His perforated lung also affected some of his other abilities. He had no way to heal it now. His arm grew to inhuman sizes, reminding me of our first fight. His legs also seemed to be filled with unusual strength. He jumped towards me at unexpected speeds. He combined all of the strengthening quirks he has available, which means this bastard is actually using Rumi's quirk against me. Before his hand even came close to me, all of his fingers were bent in unusual ways. I danced around him at my greatest speed, to the point where even a simple touch would bend and break his enhanced bones. I obviously covered my arm in light before touching him. I didn't want to injure myself too much. After a few seconds, most of his bones were either cracked or sticking out of his body unnaturally. He seemed to be holding back a pain gasp. He should have some pain-numbing quirks. I think Gigantomachia was completely unable to feel pain. I looked at his broken form, with a glint of pleasure in my eye. Were you also expecting this type of outcome, All for One? I asked him, as he was putting his bones back in their place. It was a possibility, one I thought improbable. To think you held back this much on our first confrontation. His voice didn't hold as much vigor as before. Seeing him crushed to this extent does put a smile on my face. During our little exchange, he couldn't even do anything to fight back. I almost pity him. Too bad that slither of pity is really overshadowed by my hatred for him. After all, anger always transforms into hatred. The transformation might have been a bit fast, but it's there. Maybe I was overestimating him a bit when thinking he has something else in his sleeve. I doubt anything he could pull off would even be anything more than a mild inconvenience. All for One sat down, looking shocked and confused. Things weren't supposed to go this way. His voice was really pathetic. This wasn't even enjoyable anymore. I am a bit curious now. How exactly did you gather this many people in these few weeks? I asked. Although, I can already guess his answer. The way the high-ranking members carried themselves spoke for itself. It was probably some sort of mind-controlling quirk. Although, I don't really remember him having anything of the sort. Oh well, a lot of what's happening can be summed up as the butterfly effect. The influence I had on the events in this world is impossible to overlook. All for One gaining a mind-controlling quirk is not that big a surprise compared to everything else that has been happening. Unfortunately for him, he decided not to respond to my question. He, once again, tried to warp himself away. Likely hoping I was somehow distracted by my own curiosity. Too bad for him, I sent another laser through his liver, leaving him with another wound he can't heal momentarily. The pain made him flinch a bit, but he tried to keep going. So I decided to just explode him away, again. The mist of the warp quirk wasn't fast enough to help him at all. I appeared in front of him again. You know, it's rude to ignore someone when he's speaking to you, I said in a matter-of-fact tone. I know, a bit hypocritical coming from me. But I can't help mocking him when possible. He looked like he had given up, just laying on the ground and looking up. Chapter 92, All for One Side. Things weren't supposed to go this way. I have prepared for this extensively, preparing for most possibilities that I could come up with, just to see it all be for nothing. I detest the man in front of me. Even now, he is playing around with me, like a predator playing around with its food. It's infuriating. Ever since Kyudai managed to transfer my quirk into a decent vessel, I've been working towards two goals. One of them being, to put an end to the hero society that has only been growing more brazen as of recent. It's a hindrance, to say the least. All of these self-righteous and weak individuals going around pretending to be heroes. Playing around like children in a park. Killing the symbol of peace will be the easier part of this plan. He is already a shell of his former self. Pathetic beyond recognition. My second objective was revenge. Something petty that I always thought myself above. But it has clouded my judgment to the point of blindness. I can now see the results of my impatience. I failed to realize the strength of the enemy I was planning on taking down. The Yellow Flash, the symbol of justice, both are childish titles given to a teen named Allan. But it seems that he lives up to them, proving to be the only person to have actually managed to kill me. All Might was almost there, but he failed and almost died himself. Allan, however, was not even bothered by my presence, not putting me in his eyes. It gave me a feeling of anger I had never felt before. The emotions of a lesser man, but I am ashamed to admit that they influenced me. The first step of my plan was annexing the army of villains and adding their numbers to my ever-growing list of subordinates. And it only went so smoothly due to the quirk I stole most recently. I don't know what the person that had it before called it, but the most appropriate name I could think of is Mind Maggot. It's quite simple, really. I can spit a maggot out of my mouth. It latches on the target and burrows into their heads, giving me complete control over the person. It's very straightforward with its limitations. The maggots are very slow, and they disappear over time. They usually start to dissolve in a week. During that time, the person afflicted by them might take back some semblance of control. Producing maggots also takes a perverse amount of stamina, to the point where even I, with my multitude of stamina-enhancing quirks, could feel the drain it caused. But it is a powerful ability nonetheless. Implanting the maggot in the heads of all of the leaders of the army was easy enough. The maggot would use the memories of the person it inhabited, allowing them to use the quirks of the people they inhabit too. It made the annexation of the army even easier. After I captured the army, a few decently powerful villains also joined in. Dobby, a person with a decently powerful fire quirk, and Mr. Compress, with the ability to minimize everything he touches and trap them in a small pearl of sorts. They were both going to be great pawns. I avoided using Mind Maggot on the two of them, not out of kindness, but due to the amount of stamina it took to maintain multiple people under my command. It took me a while to take over the entire army, but I was successful. The next part was taking the warp quirk of the Nomu named Kurojiri. I sent some people to find his whereabouts and prepared to rally the fodder for an all-out assault against the heroes. The first thing I needed was a distraction, and my ever-faithful former bodyguard was happy to provide it. He had been tasked to protect the laboratory, which he failed to do. He was caught in the explosion, but I managed to warp him out before he died. It did leave him in a coma for a while, but he will wake up in time. I left him near a city, somewhat near the prison where my pupil is being held. I cannot wait to taunt All Might with Tamira's true identity. His shock will be enjoyable to watch, as I murder him in front of the next generation he cares so dearly for. Gigantomachia managed to stir up enough trouble. It gave me time to attack the hospital where Kurojiri was being held. It wasn't a long affair. I just teleported in there and stole his quirk, although it did raise an alarm. I was not expecting the hero that responded to be the rumored lover of the Yellow Flash. It was not planned. Using her as a bargaining chip sounded like a good decision. Capturing her was not difficult. I just crushed her under my right hand and stole her quirk. I didn't bother waiting after that. I used my newly acquired warp quirk to transport my hostage to a further location, leaving 2 subordinates to guard her, just in case. After doing that, I just started the assault on UA, using 4 Nomas that had the same jammer quirk as the one that attacked Tartaros. It wasn't combined with anything else, but the range it was extending to was quite large. The whole point of this was to slow down response. It gave me time to trash the symbol of peace. He was diligently fighting the people under my command. The students were also running away in a pathetic state. Most were scared and restless, while others were fighting roughly. These were mere children after all. But even they could deal with some of the cannon fodder that formed this army. I didn't join in the fight against All Might at first. I wanted to see the state he was in, and I was right. He was pathetic. He couldn't even finish off a few weaklings. The people with maggots were decent, but they were all weaklings. More and more reinforcements came. Students and teachers fought together. Watching them struggle helplessly against the overwhelming amount of villains I was continuously supplying them with was satisfying. but not as satisfying as the moment my fingers pierced All Might's abdomen. He was already tired. I couldn't help but gloat a bit. Crushing him was not difficult. He was straightforward and easy to predict. Taking off his hand was all done in a quick exchange. He started deflating quickly after that. His appearance managed to amuse me greatly. So pitiful, so weak. Then, just as I was about to end All Might, Allan came and saved him. Predictable, but his end will come soon. Who will protect All Might after that? Well, simply put, things are horrendous. The army I gathered dying was fine, but what followed was truly what mattered the most. The precaution I had taken was useless. And the strength I was confident in was shown to be useless. I was not even capable enough to react to his movements. Escaping was my only hope, but it was also a hopeless endeavor. All I needed was a second, but a second was too long it seems. I should have prepared more, but I was hurrying so much that I had forgotten to properly research my most dangerous opponent. All I could do now was lay on the ground and stare at the sky. Every mocking word of his reminded me of my failure. Chapter 93, Heroic Conduct. All for One had given up? The man that once ruled over Japan simply gave up? That is quite hard to believe to me. Although, the way he fell definitely looked pathetic. He should be struggling, making this more interesting. But I guess he has reached the end of his rope. I won't bother much with him anymore. Killing him is a given. You know, this feels a bit like a déjà vu, I said in a friendly tone. He didn't even react, so trapped in his own thoughts of helplessness. Where has his arrogance gone to? Did it get blown away along with his lung? I wish he would have put up more of a fight. I haven't gotten to torture him properly yet. Seeing him done almost makes me want to just end him quickly. But when I think about Rumi, I feel like taking a few more shots. I rose a few spikes out of the ground and impaled all of his limbs. The light traveled throughout his body. I started slashing around into his body, shredding his organs repeatedly. It only looked like he was coughing blood. But I made sure to make it painful. It still didn't get much reaction. I guess he has gigantomachia's pain tolerance. Which means he doesn't really feel pain. He reacts to it, much like a fish, but he can't feel it. I forgot the name of the quirk that did it, but it seemed quite useful. All for One seemed to have been brought out of his trance, which made him open up his mouth. Are these truly the actions of a hero? He seemed to have regained some of his energy, although he still had some injuries that weren't healing. I responded by cutting his stomach open. He grabbed it in time to not allow his guts to spill all over the ground. I don't feel like hearing you preach. A pathetic worm like you should know its place. Since he doesn't actually feel pain, I will keep putting pressure on his psyche. As long as he doesn't feel comfortable, it makes me feel better. And it seemed to work well. He really disliked being looked down upon. Although he didn't show his reaction outwardly, his eye definitely widened a bit. Maybe he realized that he was worthless in my eyes. I didn't even regard him as highly as he regarded All Might. I made it a point already. I consider him less important than my dinner the next evening. Now that I think about it. Next week was supposed to be another date with Rumi. Now I feel bad again. Oh, and would you look at that? One of his legs were blown off. He would have fallen face first into the ground if he didn't have a flying quirk. I reject this outcome. Oh, there it is. The last childish outburst of the greatest villain to ever live. Really inspiring for the next generations of wrongdoers. He is used to being in control of the situation, so I guess those words came out as more of a reflex. As if he still had some semblance of control over the outcome of our fight. But he didn't. The only thing he could do that would change the ending of this battle is to commit suicide. That way, I wouldn't be able to say that I killed him. I also wouldn't stop him. Letting him die like that is the best way. I already killed him once. Will he be too prideful to do it? He did something unexpected, took out a familiar-looking syringe. The needle didn't even get close to his skin before both his hands disappeared. I ripped them off at the greatest speed I could manage. Seriously? The same trick twice? This was the most predictable thing he could have done. Since I already knew he had trigger from our last encounter. Since he wasn't going to do it himself. I guess it comes down to me. I looked him in the eyes. A question looming in my mind. I wonder. If I rip your head off, will the rest of your body grow a new one? Or will it attempt to recreate another body from the neck down? I childishly tilted my head for a bit. Please. Indulge my curiosity for one last time. Symbol of evil, I made sure to say his title with a great amount of sarcasm. He finally showed terror in his eyes. A feeling I really hoped he would adopt by now. He just stared at the ground. The hatred and fear radiating off of him seemed to be suffocating to the shocked students and teachers. I just covered his entire face with my palm, grasping it tightly. He tried to grasp my hand, but his attempts just passed through me. But something I wasn't expecting was someone else to approach me. Naijuru and Shinso both pulled on my coat, looking somewhat afraid, but determined nonetheless. You too? What's wrong? I asked, my tone a bit hurried and annoyed. Why you should stop. You're going too far. You are a hero, Allan. Would you look at that? The spineless Naijuru had the guts to shout at me. Allan. I understand that you want to kill this heinous villain. But he is already done. Shinso took a much calmer approach. It made me observe my surroundings a bit. Oh yeah, the students. They were still around. This must be quite shocking for most of them. I definitely didn't look anything like a hero today. I seeing the people I care about look afraid of me. But all I need is a little bit of force, and I would take the life of this vermin. You too. What exactly do you want me to do? He is the reason you're all injured. He is the reason this attack happened. He is not a safe person to keep alive. Just as I was about to pull, another voice interrupted me. Do you really think this is the solution to your problems, Allan? It was Chio, the resident nurse. I just looked at her a bit, hurrying her to make her point already. Do you really think Eri, a child that looks up to heroes, would like seeing you like this? Pull yourself together already. She seemed quite angry, but she is right. Eri. Would she really think highly of the way I acted just now? Would she still look up to me? Do I even want her to look up to me right now? I just threw All for One on the ground, burning off 3 of his legs. And I turned around, looking at the people behind me. I still paid attention to the villain. I also made sure to burn off both of his hands, rendering his quirk useless. I wouldn't want him to try and pull off something funny later. His expression was one of great shock. Maybe he wasn't expecting me to spare him now. I killed him last time, but I guess he gets to live a bit more. Just a bit. Shinso and Naijuru took a step back, both of them looking a bit startled. Did I really make them fear me to this extent? The people that witnessed everything that happened between me and All for One. I doubt they will view me the same as before. I did just torture this villain right in front of them. My colleagues, my friends, and students. All of them seemed to fear me. It was strange. What would their reaction be if I just killed All for One in that way? Would they even look me in the eyes anymore? Maybe I went a bit far? I said, trying to lighten the tone a bit. It didn't do much. But another voice seemed to do a lot better than me. Allan! You like freak. Did you give up on being a hero? It was Bakugo. His first shout seemed to have captured the attention of the people around him. It made him look around, and what the fuck is wrong with all of you idiots? The fuck are you afraid of? Bakugo was actually managing to calm down the students, something I never thought him capable of. I guess I didn't act like a hero at all. I was selfish, really unlike the symbol I dress up as. Or, I guess I was just like All Might in that regard. We were both driven by revenge. I was just much stronger. All for One drove me to the point where I almost gave up on being a hero. Something I can't help but despise. After getting this much strength, am I still that weak? I apologize to all of you. For the first time in my life, I took Ida posture. A perfect 90-degree bow, and apologized. Admitting my mistakes was the right move, it seems. As everyone seemed to collectively release a sigh of relief. Chio only shook her head a bit. It seems I've disappointed my colleagues with this shameful display. The students all looked at each other. They all collectively nodded. Thank you, Allan/teacher. It was the first time in a while I've been thanked for something. Even if they couldn't decide properly on what to call me. I couldn't help but release a sigh. I wasn't really satisfied with this ending. But not everything must go my way. All for one. I guess he gets to live a few more weeks. Killing him now will just make me seem like the villain. There's no way the government will let him live after today's stunt. Chapter 94, Results and Bitterness. After calming down the students, I could only look around. I don't understand when exactly I degraded to this point. Killing people like it didn't matter at all. I used to be a regular person. What happened? The first time I stopped caring for the lives of the villains around me was when I attacked the Shai Saikai. Although nobody died that day, I still didn't care about injuring them heavily. I guess that lead up to the bridge incident. My actions that day might be justifiable. I wasn't as strong as I am now, but they certainly weren't righteous. I could have gone in another direction that day. I could have done it like All Might and only used lethal force against the stronger villains, but I just indiscriminately killed them all. Out of both All Might and Endeavor, I hesitated the least that day. One might argue that Endeavor burned a lot of people alive that day. But that's just the way he fights. Usually, he holds back enough to capture the villains he is pursuing. But holding back was impossible that day. He had no actual choice in the matter. But my usual fighting style revolves around kicks, punches, and just about any weapon I think of at the time. I chose not to hold back. A hero isn't supposed to be bloodthirsty. That's a simple fact. Not even the obsessed Endeavor treated life as poorly as I did today. I think the only person that can relate to this is All Might. He was bloodthirsty only against All for One. And it led to his grievous injuries. Both our outbursts were revenge-driven. But mine took a lot more lives. Maybe I am not the healthiest person, mentally speaking that is. Or maybe I was just pushed over the edge seeing everyone like that. But those are just excuses. Maybe I should have taken Nisa's offer after the bridge incident. He tried to get me to go to a psychiatrist, saying that some things might leave unresolved issues in my mind. I guess he was right. Or maybe I always had them. Did the police psychiatrist fail to see some underlying mental issues? It's possible. Although, I did manage to pull myself back together. Although, I guess I couldn't have done it by myself. Everyone present had a hand in helping me regain my composure. I still need to actually visit that psychiatrist Nisa told me about. Now I only have some cleanup to do. All for One had already given up completely. Not even bothering to attempt to warp away. It seemed that, to him, staring at the sky was more interesting. Both Naijuru and Shinso seemed to relax. Mina and Toru soon joined the two. The four of us chatted a bit. I inquired further about what happened in this place. Some parts were still unclear after all. Allan, where did you take the injured students and teachers? Mina seemed to be a bit curious today. I transported them to the hospital. I don't know how they are now, I said in a grave tone. Although the situation here was pretty much dead and done. The same can't be said about the people that fought here today. Many of them had life-changing injuries. The students weren't exactly spared either. Mineta was one of these people. Against all expectations, he didn't try to run away in fear. He held on for quite a while, throwing his balls all around the circle they were protecting. But he was stabbed in the stomach by a villain that had blades growing out of his elbows. Mina said that the only reason he survived was that Kirishima got there in time to block the second blade. Besides him, most of the first years just had minor injuries. The second and third years had it much worse. Many were injured in vital spots. I managed to carry them off, but I don't know if all of them will survive. Aizawa and Toshi both have low chances of surviving. The rest of the teachers will be able to pull through. Cementos is a tough guy. I don't doubt that he will survive. They are all tired, so Chiyo's quirk won't be of much help. It might even do more harm than good. Mina seemed saddened by my answer. Toru also seemed depressed. Shinso and Naijuru just looked at each other a bit. Allan, can you restrain the remaining villains? Asked Shinso. He is quite clear-headed even in this situation. I just nodded and created clones to do my work. Although technically I am still the one working. I'm physically not doing anything, and that makes me happy. I also need to carry the more seriously injured villains to nearby hospitals. Some of them might survive. They definitely wouldn't return to a life of crime though, not after what happened here. Shinso and the rest all went to their respective classmates and tended to the less serious injuries. None of them had actual medical training, but applying a band-aid doesn't require a medical degree. I turned around for one last time and looked at All for One. He seemed to still be in his own world. Young Allan. Quite the mess you've made today. But, regardless of all that, I need to thank you for helping everyone. It was Nizu, he even bowed his head to me. That's something he usually only does jokingly. I've never actually seen him seriously bow his head to someone. Say, Nizu. Do you think All Might will be fine? It was a stupid question. I already know the answer. The symbol of peace will retire after today. There is no doubt about it. If he survives his injuries, he still won't be able to use One for All anymore. Nizu just shook his head. Let's not think about that for now. Did you subdue the giant villain properly? I didn't get to see it since I was distracted by this situation. I scratched the back of my head with a bit of a grunt. I kinda sliced off his limbs in a hurry while on live television. And I left the others clean up the mess. Nizu just looked at me, his smile straining a bit. Great! Another controversy. As if the events that just transpired weren't enough to startle the public. He sighed a bit as he walked off. I'm going back to my office. I have a lot of calls to make. I believe you also need to go somewhere? He is right. Everyone is injured, that includes Rumi. I want to be by her side now. But will All for One sit still while I'm away? He certainly didn't look like he was about to start a riot. But some precautions are in order. I quickly called Power Loader to bring some special restraints and asked Chiyo for a special sedative. Normally, he wouldn't be affected by regular stuff. But that combined with Midnight's aroma seemed to do the trick. After finishing that, and restraining the rest of the villains, I rushed back towards the hospital I took Rumi to. It was still basically on the other side of the country. Reaching her side was easy. She was still in surgery. I don't know the extent of her injuries, but all I can do now is sit down and wait. I will worry about everything else later. Chapter 95, Sense of Loss. The only thing that comes to mind right now is the Sleeping Beauty. I guess the story itself doesn't have much to do with anything. But the name certainly fits the situation. Rumi is currently in a coma. The surgery went smoothly, but they couldn't fix everything at once. Apparently, her spinal cord was also affected. She may never be able to walk again. You'd think that there would be a quirk out there strong enough to heal her injuries. But, as of now, the doctors are stumped about it. Rumi is set to be moved to another hospital a bit closer to home now. She still hasn't woken up after about 10 hours. I can't really stay by her side at all times. Although I very much want to. I need to take care of Eri. I can't really leave her unattended. When Rumi wakes up, we both need to be in tip-top shape. Eri. I guess she could heal Rumi. Actually, she should be able to heal everyone that was injured during the last villain attack. Hell, she should be able to heal anything that isn't dead. Rewind is likely a lot more powerful than both One for All and All for One. But Eri is still very young, she isn't really able to use it properly yet. But is she ready for that? Her quirk is definitely under control, but we don't really know its limitations. What if she reverts something too much? I would also love for her to keep her childlike innocence a bit longer. I will likely end up giving her the choice. At this point, it would be selfish to not do anything about it. Although, her answer isn't much of a mystery. She will accept. Especially since Rumi is currently in this state. There is no way she will refuse helping her. As for what happened to the others, Toshinori and Aizawa are still in the surgery room. They are both still not in the clear. But, the variety of healing quirks that the government is willing to employ to keep Toshi alive might actually be able to preserve their lives. The rest are mostly out of the red. A few students seem to have lost their lives, which means that Niza must make a public apology. The students that lost their lives were the ones that decided to run away from the circle. The teachers are being blamed for not protecting them properly. Although, most of the people agree that the situation was out of their hands. It feels a bit strange really. Thankfully, not that many people actually blame the heroes for that day, it was the usual suspects. Sketchy news articles and conspiracy theorists or anti-vaxxers or some shit. Surprisingly, any scrutiny that might have come my way is erased by the applause. My brutal and over-the-top actions that day seemed to resonate with the public, as they were enraged at the group of villains for attacking children. I might have caused a lot of casualties, but I did so in a highly stressful situation. No one reported the fact that I basically tortured a villain both mentally and physically on purpose. You can bet the media would be having a field day with that one. I was the one to handle Rumi's transport. I made sure to keep her completely stationary. I encased her and all of the doctors in a light sphere. Getting back to Mizutofu took me about 2 hours. One of the doctors had a quirk that could keep Rumi in a stable condition during the flight. The others were tagging along in case something bad happened. That and to give aid to the hospitals in Mizutofu. It was still faster than with a plane, as they didn't need to wait and prepare the damn thing. The doctors safely transferred Rumi to Mizutofu's best hospital, where they also remained to help the overworked doctors of Mizutofu. Right now, Rumi only needed to be supervised. There was little chance for further complications. It would also be hard, as most of the doctors were busy with the injuries from the villain incident. The villains actually took the most space, as they were around 20,000 of them. Although a good number of them were already beyond any help. The prisons were also being stuffed full of recovering villains. Most of the cells were used as recovery bays at this point. I must say, they moved really fast. Collecting every single villain would take a lot of time. I guess a lot of people volunteered to help. A lot of heroes were seen helping out too. Either out of kindness or clout chasing, it matters little, as long as they are actually helping. After staying near Rumi for a few hours, I need to go back home. It's already in the middle of the night. But I'm sure Eri's still awake. She is likely still waiting there. I still don't know how to break the news to her. Although, she probably already knows something happened. As happy and innocent as she is very perceptive. Sometimes she's even scary, takes after her mother, Rumi. I wonder if Eri will be able to help Rumi regain her quirk. I remember that she had the ability to rewind genetics. Although, she might not be able to actually use it yet. Upon reaching the door of our house, I could already sense her. She was on the living room couch. She seemed to be asleep. She probably tried to wait for me and Rumi to arrive but fell asleep eventually. I didn't open the door, as that would have woken Eri up. She needs some rest after all. I also need a lot of rest. I feel quite drained. I entered the house through the lock. It was a trick I learned in order to sneak back home without Rumi inquiring about my whereabouts. It never actually worked with her, but it was great for stealth. Thankfully, I made sure to stay away from any other women. She always seems to check for any unfamiliar perfume. I always think about her. It will take a while for her to wake up. You can guess that I will really miss her meanwhile. I couldn't help but notice that Aerie was trembling a bit. She was either cold or having a nightmare, both of which are unacceptable. Even if I'm in a stump, I won't let little Aerie suffer. I gently picked her up and took her to bed. The shared room, as I recently started to call it. It used to be Rumi's bedroom, then it turned into the freeloaders and Rumi's bedroom. You can guess who named it that, then it turned into the only place all three of us ever sleep in. I obviously tucked her in properly and lay right beside her, hugging her close to me. She probably woke up during the whole thing, but she definitely fell right back to sleep. Little Aerie is tired after all. And so am I. I have a lot of things to do for tomorrow. But now, I want to relax. Which is very hard. But, feeling Aerie's little horn in my side calms me down greatly. I wouldn't be able to sleep tonight if it wasn't for Aerie. Chapter 96, Revelations and True Strength. I woke up in the morning feeling refreshed. A new day, new problems to deal with. At least I get to wake up next to Aerie, which I can already foresee will be the highlight of today. I doubt anything else great is going to happen now. The story of the villain attack is still fresh in the minds of the public. I think Nizu will hold a press conference today to answer some of the inquiries of the distressed public. He also needs to somehow compensate the families of the fallen students, which I can't really see going nicely. It's a bit hard to believe that people would criticize UA's defense system even though no place in the world could have defended against that type of attack. Kurogiri's warp quirk is extremely powerful, and that jammer quirk was also a huge factor. The same one that took down the defenses of Tartaros. I believe that, in both cases, it's been enhanced by a different quirk. This means that the jammer quirk alone might not be that great. But it's still annoying. It's only due to its existence that I couldn't be contacted earlier. I would have incapacitated Gigantomachia faster if I knew something like that was happening at UA. But it's no use crying about it now. I'm also curious about where they are going to take All for One. He should be a lot less powerful than in the series now. Especially since I got rid of his legs. Some might say that getting rid of his legs doesn't matter, as he can just fly. But it's hard to actually put weight behind your punches without them. There is also the fact that I left a hole in his lung. But that's neither here nor there. He's survived worse. But mental scars should be a lot more damaging than physical injuries. He was always a prideful person, always thinking that he was above everyone else around him. Even after getting defeated by All Might, there was little to suggest his arrogance subsided in any way. But him being subjected to such humiliation repeatedly might have been a bit much for him to handle. I thought he would be stronger, especially since he should have plenty of life experience. It seems that when faced with death, he still folded and shut down everything around him in fear and terror. Really, unsightly. But, I also feel mad at myself more than anything. I don't really understand what I was trying to achieve yesterday. It seems that having power doesn't mean anything at all when you're immature. That's right. Even if my actions could be justified as revenge, they were merely childish tantrums that cost the lives of many. Actions I can't afford to repeat. Even if I did kill All for One that day, how would that change his fate? He is currently captured and trapped in the deepest part of Tartaros, awaiting his own execution at the hands of the law. So what if I didn't do it with my own hands? Who do I think I am? To take things into my own hands and do everything that I please in such drastic situations. Considering everyone that stood in front of me an ant. Disregarding everyone else that I viewed as unnecessary to society. Such selfishness and arrogance. Really similar to the one I was torturing. How far did I fall? Without realizing it, I've been acting more and more like that person each and every day. The only difference being that I actually have people I love besides myself. If I didn't, we'd be one and the same. They were the ones that stopped me in the end. I need to grow stronger, not silly power that goes away with age. I need the mental fortitude to not break down in front of my loved ones again. For Aerie. And for Rumi, I don't think she'd like being woken up to some pathetic guy that can't even take care of himself properly. With newfound determination, I rose out of bed fully energized and ready to deal with the problems I created. First thing on the list: having the talk with Ari. Not getting her involved in any of this was just another selfish wish of mine. Especially since she would wish to help. But I can't keep going down that road. I will tell her everything. Let her decide on her own. She may be young, but she is already mature enough to decide such things for herself. Ari definitely felt me rise out of bed. Mainly because she was clinging to me like a cat. "Good morning, little Ari," I said with a simple smile. "Dad. Where's Mom?" That was the first thing she said. She looked really concerned. I just sighed. I hope not to get straight into the issue. But not having Rumi with us is unnatural for both of us. So it's obviously the first thing she'd say. I hugged her tightly. Her horn digging into me didn't bother me one bit. "Ari. Rumi is hurt. She is still sleeping." I looked down. My eyes met hers. They were slightly wet. She was tearing up already. "Don't worry. We will visit her later today. I'll call your homeroom teacher and tell her you can't come today," I said while patting her head. She shook her head. "I'll go." She said education is important, that you shouldn't end up like that freeloader. She wiped her tears away and smiled a bit. I didn't think she would take this so nicely. It's a good thing that I didn't actually tell her what the injuries were. She might have reacted differently. After all, it's not like we didn't get injured before. I'll ignore Rumi calling me a freeloader for now. I will tell her about the injured teachers and students another time. I still have a lot to do, and she will probably find out at the hospital anyway. I still have quite a few things to do today. But I need to make breakfast. Ari likes eating sweets, therefore pancakes are the best choice for that. Rumi would probably kick me into a wall, as she said I shouldn't let Ari eat too many sweets, but she's not here now, so I can do what I want. Totally won't backfire on him. By the time I finished making them, she was already dressed in her little uniform. "Oh, pancakes!" she shouted happily as she waved her arms around a bit. "Don't tell Rumi. Okay?" I asked in a pleading manner. She just nodded, not even paying attention to me anymore. Which just made me release a sigh. After we both finished eating, I took Ari to her school, hugged her one last time, and wished her a nice day. I will also try my best for today. Chapter 97, Press Conference and Waking Up. Reaching UA was as fast as usual. Nisa had already started setting up the venue for the press conference. Nothing too much, just a small podium in the courtyard. The teachers were likely resting right now, but there was other staff to help him with the stage. I also started helping out when I arrived. Not before a short conversation. "Allan! Great to see you around." Always keeping that cheerful tone around people, regardless of the direness of the situation. It's just like him. But, as someone that knows him, his fur is unkempt, the dark circles around his eyes are less visible but still present. He is clearly stressed about everything, probably overworked too. "Nizu. It seems you're in need of some help. Figured I'm still free, so why not?" I said with a lazy smile on my face. Although, I still need to ask something else of him. "Say, Nizu. Do you still have the number of that psychologist you were talking about?" Nizu just looked at me for a second. "Sure thing. Here you go." He handed me a business card with the number on it. Not even asking what made me change my mind about a psychiatrist. He's perceptive enough to realize how recent events have affected me mentally. He is the smartest rat around after all. Although I am a bit reluctant about it. It's still better to try working towards solving my problems than ignoring them and letting them fester and turn into something worse. After that, I just went around and helped where I could. The press conference was really annoying. I was also on the stage, looking at the reporters as they tried their best to pry a reaction out of Nizu. There were also the few that showed genuine concern for the staff and students affected by the attack. But most of the questions went something like this. Does UA plan on taking responsibility for the innocents that lost their lives during yesterday's incident? Which I ended up answering, as Nizu was already getting tired. I believe the ones responsible were the villains in this case. Next question. It was short, sarcastic, and mocking, but it seemed to be enough for most of them. The one that asked the question seemed to want to further inquire on the matter, but he was drowned out by others. Nizu was also a bit glad that I was the one to answer that. It might not have been the best response, but my reputation reached the point where I could snuff out most criticism. I gained a dedicated fanbase after all. There were also people speaking about UA's defense system. How were the villains able to infiltrate the school grounds twice in 3 months? Weren't the defenses strengthened after the first one? This wasn't as provocatory, but it was still a tricky one. Thankfully, Nizu is a quick thinker. Although the systems were revamped, the method of attack was quite different this time. The jammer quirk they used affected the surroundings on a much larger scale, much like the one in Tartaros. He didn't outright say that it was the same, but it was implied. The rest of the questions weren't as bad. Until we got to All Might. What is the current state of this symbol of peace? Once again, not malicious. Just really hard to answer. Nizu seemed really reluctant to answer it, so I took the podium once again. He fought bravely. He held a lot of the villain back until my arrival. He is currently resting. I couldn't say that he was defeated, as nobody would believe it anyway. But just saying he is resting isn't untrue. He hasn't woken up yet. His surgery finished sometime last night. It was a miracle he survived. The mobilization of healing quirks that the government pulled was really astounding. They even masked it as healing the excessive number of injured villains. But most of them ended up helping heal All Might unknowingly. Few learned the truth about the symbol's identity. After all, keeping someone's secret matters little when the life of the person in question is in danger. Aizawa too is out of the red. He was also in a coma. I really hope he doesn't wake up yet, as the pain would be a bit much, and painkillers are harmful. He might be out of the red, but his body is riddled with slowly closing injuries and burns. The massive surge in healing quirks at the Muzutafu hospital only stabilized him for now. Before I even realized it. It was time to go and pick Eri up from school. I bid farewell to Nizu and flew there at my own pace. I ended up having to wait half an hour at the gate. But I didn't mind. It gave me time to think about the little trip to the hospital we will be having. Hearing a cute voice break me out of my thoughts is always nice. Dad! Seeing her depart from her friends and start skipping towards me is always cute. I just grabbed her, spun her around a bit and placed her on my right shoulder, using my right hand to support her. Eri, was school fun today? I said with a smile. She nodded a bit excitedly and told about the things she learned from it. I let her finish before speaking too. So, are you ready to visit Mom? I kept my tone confident and reassuring, not showing any of the fear or uncertainty I was feeling. She just nodded quickly, her smile never disappearing from her face. I just encased us both in light and flew away. Underscore 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 POV Rumi underscore 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 underscore. Waking up in a hospital bed isn't a great experience. But, overall, not that unfamiliar for a hero. But, as I started to try and move around a bit, I realized I couldn't even feel anything from weight down. It filled me with dread as I tried to wrap my head around what had happened. The last thing I remember doing was trying to stop a group of strange villains while they were attacking a hospital. It didn't really go as planned. They overpowered and one of them put his hand on my head. It felt like a part of me was being forcefully taken away. Then I simply passed out. It was either from the shock of it or the pain. Now, I'm in a hospital bed. So I can guess they either didn't capture me or I've been rescued. I didn't expect being outclassed like that by anyone besides Allan. I guess I will need to be more careful next time. If there ever will be one. I can no longer feel my ears. I also feel inexplicably weak. Was my quirk stolen? Allan did talk about a villain or multiple that might have that ability, but I didn't think much of it at the time. I should have taken his warning to heart. What would he say if he saw me in this state? Would he think that I am pathetic? Probably not, but I still can't help worrying about that. Just as I was about to start crying, I heard the door to my room open. And the people I cared most about walked into my hospital room. A really tall and lanky guy and the cutest, most adorable child to ever grace my world. Chapter 98, Aries Resolve. As soon as I entered the room, all I could think of was she's awake. I genuinely hoped she would be awake, but it was unlikely. It seems I underestimated how strong she truly is. I decided to completely ignore the fact that her eyes were a bit watery. I really dislike seeing her like this. It makes me feel strange. Mom! Did you sleep well? We really missed you. Ari ran up to Rumi instantly. There was not a trace of hesitation in her as she jumped on the bed and hugged Rumi tightly. I felt the need to intervene, as she probably doesn't know much about what happened. Wouldn't want her to think she was in a coma for too long. It's been about a day. But it honestly felt much longer. It felt odd, not hearing you nag me to sleep. I said with a shitty grin. I won't come in here and act all tragic. She doesn't need that right now. After all, she just lost her legs. I don't want her to lose her spirit too. Although, she might be able to recover at the end of the day. She just looked at me. Her smile seemed a bit strained. What happened? I felt a weird pang in my heart when seeing it. It was painful. Rumi has always been a strong person. I've seen her bedridden before. I thought she wouldn't be uncomfortable showing me her weak side. I guess I shouldn't expect her to do so when I always seem like the perfect example of absolute strength. I detest this feeling, seeing her feel inferior to me. I think she realizes just how strange this makes me feel, as she looks at me and gives me a hint of a genuine smile. Just a hint. Her situation is still very real. Remember the villain that could steal quirks? He apparently came back for revenge. I think you weren't part of his plan though. You were mostly a bonus, I think. I said, simplifying the whole situation and trying hard not to say that they used her as a hostage without lying. But my attempt seemed to be a bit shoddy, so I was a hostage, huh? She said, looking down at the blanket that covered her legs. Ari was still hugging her, trying to make up for an entire night of absence. The little angel probably felt the strained atmosphere. I did say she is perceptive. But she chose to stay silent and let us talk to each other for a while. Yes. But the situation wouldn't have changed, whether he captured you or not. Rumi looked up at me, confused. After all, she still didn't know that the target of the whole situation was UA and Heroes Society itself. So I started explaining, letting Ari hear the situation as well. She needed to know what was happening fully before she decided whether to help or not. I don't think I will be able to ask her after all. I am still too weak for that. She needs to do this out of her own volition for me to feel at peace. Rumi's reaction seemed to be quite drastic. She seemed enraged at how this attack was carried by the villains. But she was even madder at the fact that they had used her to get to me. I just hope she doesn't start feeling like a burden, or any other stupid thought like that. I could see one of her hands clutching the sheets of her hospital bed, whilst the other hugged Ari tightly. Sorry. She was blaming herself. Something I was hoping not to hear or see ever in my life. I did what is expected of me, as a good partner. I reached her side, and put my palm over her hand. It seemed to work quite well. Comforting her was not really the point. It was more reassuring her that I still cared about her. Ari, on the other hand, was trembling. She was sad beyond belief. But, by the end of it, her eyes seemed to shine a bit. She looked up at Rumi, her horn growing a few inches, as a yellow glow enveloped her and Rumi's entire bodies. I took a step back, not wanting to be caught in Eri's quirk. As the light subsided, I could see Rumi the same as she was the day she last left our home. Even her ears were present. I looked on, I could feel a strange sense of glee. This was the outcome I was hoping for, but Eri's quirk gets stronger based on her feelings. That's the only thing that made me unsure. Not knowing exactly how her quirk works isn't something that can be helped. No one knows how exactly it works. But I could see Eri looking at me, her horn was already bigger than before. Dad. Take me to the others. I just looked at her. It honestly felt surreal. I wasn't expecting her decision to be so quick. I guess Eri is a lot stronger than I expected. Rumi just got up, grabbed Eri and almost strangled her in a hug. I also joined in, hugging both of them with only one arm was easy. Rumi's ears hit me in the face, so I just started stroking them. Something she actually liked a lot. I could feel her leaning onto me. Just a day of absence from her part was enough to make me feel dread. I guess I felt more dread about her situation, but her absence further exacerbated problems. I didn't respond to Eri yet. But her choice is already made. After hugging Rumi a bit more, I will take Eri to the rest of the wards and let her heal the students and teachers affected by the attack. Rumi was already tearing up, but these weren't tears of sadness. I think she will want to train a lot more from now on. And I will help her at every step of the way. Even if there won't ever be a threat bigger than All for One, it's better for her to be prepared for anything. As for me, there isn't much to prepare for. Fighting isn't something I need to worry about. But I have things I need to work on. I always joked that Rumi was a possessive person. But I am much worse than her. From hesitating to let Eri help in this dire situation to my outburst that killed thousands and counting. It is just another problem I have to work on. For now, I will just enjoy this hug. A bit of warmth before going and letting Eri do what she always wanted. Being a hero, that is. Chapter 99, Rewind's Prowess. After a few minutes of group hugging and hearing Rumi regain her energy, I took Eri towards the other hospital rooms. Rumi couldn't come with us. She went to speak to a doctor about getting a few tests done and going home. She seemed quite excited to get out of the hospital. But I believe they will still keep her here for a bit. It's unknown what effects Eri's quirk can have on the human body. As for how exactly her quirk returned. Eri's quirk is said to be able to rewind even genetics. Even if the quirk was forcefully removed, there is no reason as to why her genetics couldn't be rewinded to a point where they had the quirk. Eri's quirk is really strange still. Just like mine, her quirk can't really be placed in any known category. Mine is a bit simple, it can't be classified properly due to its multitude of uses. But Eri's quirk simply manifests differently. It's also powered by her emotions. Overall, I would say it's more of a mutation, but also an emitter of sorts. Hard to describe. I took Eri's hand and guided her to the rooms. One by one every student that had been injured was filled with energy and healed completely. At this point, a few of the doctors were running near us, diagnosing patients as Eri finished rewinding them. Under normal circumstances, a child wouldn't be allowed to use his quirk in a hospital. But I can use my identity to allow a few exceptions to happen. Being a hero has a lot of benefits after all. Things that I couldn't really do as a vigilante. Like having controversies. Yeah, heroes are boring. At least I can flex my fame muscles and make people trust me. Slowly, all of the students in this hospital were healed. Turned back to their healthy states, to be more exact. The doctors seemed to be somewhat relieved. I guess they couldn't just take my word for it. I wasn't exactly a doctor after all. But the people that had been healed all seemed healthy and, upon further examination, were perfectly fine. Mineta was also healed completely. Although I didn't really want to heal him, I guess I'll give him a chance. From what I understood, he didn't even try to run away that day. Although he was trembling like a scared puppy the whole time. He may be weak and a pervert, but he's no coward. Kirishima was quite thankful too. Most of his wounds weren't exactly grave, but he was still filled with bruises. He also had a broken arm. Eri actually needed to heal him twice, mainly because I didn't appreciate him calling Eri manly. A few fists of love seemed to fix his mistake. Monoma was also a lot more humble than usual. I guess he is only haughty to his rivals. But he was also happy to be walking again. His leg muscles were quite affected by the continuous use of Recipro Burst. Now he was back to normal. By the time we reached the first teacher Eri had to heal, it had already been an hour of walking around and rewinding patients. The person in the room was still unconscious. It was Synopsis, a person familiar to both me and Eri. I could see that she looked even more determined after seeing him. She healed him almost instantly. His limbs seemed to just reappear magically. He didn't wake up, but at least now I could hear him snore as the doctors removed the breathing equipment from his mouth. Apparently, his lungs were also damaged quite badly. The next few rooms were similar. Midnight wasn't anywhere near as hurt as Synopsis. She had still been shot once or twice. She was awake when we came in. She seemed quite happy that we visited her. She turned even happier when Eri healed her. Eri's head was quickly squashed between two mountains. I didn't do much to help, but thankfully, Midnight released her before she passed out from lack of oxygen. I almost regretted healing present mixed vocal cords. Hearing him sing was never fun, but Eri seemed to enjoy it, so I also pretended to not hate it. Vlad was also wide awake. He thanked little Eri quite earnestly. He is a polite person after all. 13 was not really injured at all. But she needed a lot of rest after what had happened. And then there was Aizawa. Still in a coma, connected to as many machines as possible. I looked down at Eri for a bit. I felt her little hand tighten around my finger. Her eyes seemed a bit watery. I didn't realize she got so attached to Eraser. I guess he's helped her a lot. She ran up to him. She seemed to carefully touch him. The doctors also prepared to pull off all of the cords from the machines connected to him. The healing was instant, again. But Aizawa actually woke up as the doctors were disconnecting him from every piece of equipment. He looked up at me. Then he quickly brought his arm over his previously gouged out eye. Then he looked down and saw Eri. A smile spread over his face as her eyes shined a bit. "Thanks, kid." His voice was still quite gruff. Eri just nodded energetically and hugged her teacher a bit. It was cute. Aizawa also seemed to think the same. I'd never seen him look so happy. "Glad to see you up and lively, Eraser. It's been a long day since you decided to go to sleep," I said, attracting his attention to me. His eyes turned serious. "What happened to the others?" he asked in the same tone. Eri departed from him and came back to my side. He probably lost consciousness somewhere in the middle of it all. Not getting to see the fate of everyone there. Most of them are fine. Eri healed just about everyone at this point. The only person left is Toshinori. They said he's unlikely to wake up. He looked down a bit and sighed. A small frown appeared on his face. "What about the students that tried to flee?" he said, probably referring to the ones that ran off from the middle of their circle. Their deaths were only confirmed after the incident was over. I didn't outright say anything. Eri is still in the room after all. I only looked him in the eyes and shook my head. He seemed to get the message. His frown deepened as he closed his eyes a bit. I looked down at Eri. She looked a bit confused. "I think Mr. Aizawa needs some rest. Eri, let's go help Mr. Toshinori." She just nodded, not thinking further into the matter. I waved Eraser goodbye. Before leaving I just said, "By the way, Nizu already made a press conference. No one is blaming the teachers openly." He just nodded a bit, probably taking notice of my phrasing. After all, some people still believe the teachers hold some of the faults for these casualties. I closed the door behind me and started heading for the last one. I could already feel Toshi's state. He looked more like a skeleton than usual. to the point where he looked like he was about to die any second. There were doctors by his side at all times. His body was already injured beyond recovery before this incident. This was just the nail in the coffin. But Eri will be able to heal him. I know she will, she is strong after all. She still flinched a bit when seeing his state. She approached him slowly. The doctors that weren't informed of All Might's identity were prompted to leave the room. It was unknown how One for All would react to Rewind. But they didn't want to risk further spreading All Might's secret identity. As Eri put her hand on Toshi's leg, I could see his wounds slowly disappearing. His arm also reappeared, reformed out of a yellow light that enveloped his entire body. I sighed in relief after seeing him back to the state he was previously. I didn't realize I would ever be able to call that state healthy. But Eri didn't stop there. She kept going. Quickly all signs of aging disappeared from Toshi's face. His weak body started bulking up immensely. His body seemed to be filled with strength. It seems that Eri ended up rewinding him quite a bit. I could see his eyelids fluttering open. I am curious whether or not he still has One for All. Chapter 100, The Renewed Symbol of Peace. All Might slowly stood up in a sitting position on his bed. It seems he needs to get used to his new situation. He clenched his fist a bit, he looked a bit weary. But calmed down after realizing his situation. He looked around confused. I doubt he remembers much about what happened after my arrival. But I think he can guess what actually happened yesterday, just from the fact that he is alive. Eri squealed a bit. It's All Might. I guess every child in this nation knows who he is. And since Eri wants to be a hero, then she obviously knows about Japan's oldest symbol. She jumped around a bit, she ended up climbing me and straddling my neck. He finally looked at me and Eri. A hint of realization appeared in the corner of his eyes. He isn't exactly an idiot, he knows about Eri's quirk and he can guess what just happened. What happened? He still asked, probably to hear it from someone else. Eri healed you a bit too much. You ended up back in your prime, and a few years you dash, I said in an even tone. I didn't even manage to get my last word out before he reacted. Ha ha ha, he jumped out of bed, flexing his muscles in a strongman pose. It seems he calmed down a bit after hearing me, and excitement set in. I wasn't expecting him to accept the situation so quickly. I am here. I would usually scoff at his usual catchphrase. But it's a bit different this time. All Might seemed a lot more passionate about it. To the point where he was radiating glee and determination. He just stood there admiring his own muscles. Well, I guess Eri is also looking on in awe. Does she like bulky heroes? I can create light muscles and make myself bigger if need be. The doctors were just looking at the scene in front of them in disbelief. I guess they weren't expecting old wounds to be healed just the same. I doubt they will just let him go after this. Extensive tests will be run on him, just to make sure all danger, from both old and recent injuries, is gone. After a few minutes of silence and flexing, he seemed to shake off the glee and excitement. He looked at me. Young Allan. What happened after you carried me away? Are the students fine? He said in a serious tone. I took care of the injured and dealt with the villains as soon as I arrived. Some of the villains are being interrogated as we speak. I said truthfully, omitting the fact that I tortured All for One quite a bit. After all, not mentioning something isn't lying. He nodded a bit after hearing my response, but still looked on. I really hate bringing in the bad news. I wish I didn't have to explain the death of students to the people that were protecting them. The ones that ran, in the beginning, are all fine. The ones that came back and tried to flee again aren't. I once again avoided saying that they died on account of having Eri climbed on top of me. He didn't seem to have a proper answer. But he still said, it seems we failed them. What? All Might blaming himself for no reason? No way. It's not your fault. They all chose to come back and help the teachers willingly. That wasn't exactly a situation where you could look after them. I said, trying to make him see things from my perspective. But his guilt will still remain. There's no helping it. I looked a bit at the doctors. They seemed to get the hint and leave the room for a bit. On another note, is One for All still within you? This was genuine curiosity on my part. I assume the doctors don't know about All Might's quirk and its true nature. Underscore 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 POV Toshinori underscore 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 underscore. After being defeated by All for One, I could only look in despair as the villains hurt my colleagues and students. I couldn't do anything. All for One could have taken my life at any moment. But he delayed my death on purpose, to let me watch the others struggle and suffer against his army of subordinates. And just as my arch-nemesis was about to finish me off, Allan arrived. Him arriving is the last thing I can remember. I was injured. I had doubts about my own survival. But I didn't want to die, not before properly teaching my pupil and letting him pick up my mantle. I tried to hold on to my consciousness. But as soon as my body touched the hospital bed, I blacked out. Waking up, I couldn't help but feel a familiar strength inside of my body. Something that, at some point, felt natural. It was familiar and warm, welcoming and filling me with energy. I looked around a bit. I instantly noticed a man that was around my height, skinny yet athletic physique. It was the ever-familiar and young Allan. The child climbing on top of him was his own adopted daughter. Really, how exactly did he manage to take care of a child before most of his adult colleagues, including me? I think I can piece together what has happened. Eri, the child, her quirk was capable of returning something to its previous state. She was the one to heal me, likely returning me to my prime in the process. I still asked Allan, just to make sure. Apparently, he was just as surprised as I am. But his answer made it concrete. I dug my fingers into my own hand till I felt pain, just to make sure this wasn't a dream. As soon as the realization set in, I jumped up in laughter. I couldn't help but say my catchphrase. I am here. Ever since the injury, I have been unable to say this without feeling inadequate. Was I really the symbol of peace they looked up to so fervently? Was I really strong enough to protect the people that trusted me? Would anyone consider me a symbol of peace if they knew the truth? Those were all questions that ate away at my psyche. They made me feel pathetic. A shell of the man I once was, a pathetic excuse of a hero. But, after all this time, I am finally able to say it with confidence. Just like I did in my golden ages. I could barely contain my tears as I examined my body. But I slowly calmed down. It took me a few minutes. But I needed to make sure everyone else was also fine. A hero should never be selfish. Allan's response made me feel guilty. He was right, the situation didn't allow me to help them. But that's just an excuse. As the symbol of peace, I should have been able to protect them regardless of the situation. My weakness is what killed them in the end. But I can't live on whilst looking back and pitying myself. I need to look into the future. Save as many lives as possible to make up for my years of weakness. I am young once again. I will devote my time to being a hero. Whilst I was contemplating my future, Allan sent the doctors out of the room. Is One for All still within you? Was the next question that young Allan decided to ask me. I took a bit to think about the answer. I didn't care if his daughter heard about my quirk. She is my benefactor. I will make sure to thank her properly after all of this is over. Yes, I can feel it. I think there are 2 copies of One for All currently. One in young Midoriya, and the one in me currently. I told him my exact thoughts. It seemed to put him into deep thought. I let him enter his own world as I took Eri in my arms and raised her to the ceiling, thanking her in an excited voice. I also couldn't help but think that I want to go on a patrol. I wonder if I will be discharged today. Chapter 101, The Son and the Father. While Eri and Allan were walking around the hospital, rewinding patients to their healthy states, The police were interrogating one of the very few villains that had little injuries. A man with the patches of gnarled, wrinkled, purple skin that cover much of his visible body. He was currently wearing standard prison garb and special restricting handcuffs especially made for people with fire quirks. That person is obviously Dobby, Endeavor's deceased son. Getting captured was a tragedy for the villain. He hadn't even gotten to kill all that many people, a few hundred was nothing after all. And he hadn't even gotten to fighting that person. But Toya Todoroki was not always a bloodthirsty and psychotic villain. He was once a bright child that even inherited his father's obsession with surpassing all might and becoming number one. Or, you could say that it was ingrained into him from a young age. Regardless, it had become his dream. But, after being told it was impossible by the very man that dragged him down that path. The reason for that was his quirk, or rather his body being too weak to high temperatures. He was depressed, to say the least. He had burned himself repeatedly to try and achieve his dream. But it was all for nothing in the end. The last drop in the bucket was his younger brother Shoto awakening his quirk. The small Shoto immediately replaced Toya in his father's eyes. Endeavor had stopped paying attention to him in any form or way. Or, at least none that mattered to the now young teen. All of his depression and sadness had turned into hate, seemingly overnight. He detested the very existence of the man that had rejected him. The obsession and actions of his father are what led to his mental breakdown and subsequent fall into villainy. The stitched villain started taking pleasure in the suffering of others. He enjoyed seeing people burn to ashes whilst scream in pain. He was as sadistic as he was hateful. Even if he mostly kept a cool facade, his thought is always those of a madman driven by revenge. Even now, his only regret is not getting to kill Endeavor with his own hands. He was looking around annoyed and stressed. The detective in front of him was not really something he was paying attention to. Right now, the only thought in his mind was how to escape. Slowly, he started to realize something. Even if he couldn't escape, he could still cause as much damage as possible to Endeavor. If he told the detective of his story, it wouldn't really become public knowledge instantly. But, he could ask for a press conference. He can say something along the lines of, "I will publicly speak about the intentions of the group that attacked UA." The detective could only reluctantly accept, as these were the first words to come out of the villain's mouth during the entire interrogation. Thankfully for Dobby, they didn't have anyone in the force that could read minds. Or at least no one like that was present. The best detectives in the country were currently interrogating the injured all for one, inside the new walls of Tartaros. Dobby was now standing in front of a crowd of reporters, fully restrained and strapped to a wheelchair. There was a screen between him and the reporters. Heroes were also present, just in case. When Dobby started talking, everyone thought they were here to find out the reasons that the army of villains had to attack the most prestigious hero high school. But, when the villain started talking about his past with the number 3 hero, the mood took a turn for the worse. People didn't believe it, obviously. But there were many ways to prove that the story was genuine. Dobby was okay with that. He wasn't expecting people to take his words at face value. Endeavor, on the other hand, he was distraught, to say the least. Seeing his deceased son recount his tragic backstory live was not a good feeling. Enji could somewhat recognize the person on stage. His own mistakes staring him in the eyes with a hateful visage. It reminded him of a loss he had thought he had managed to get over. The one in front of the reporters, strapped in a chair and surrounded by law enforcement, was his son. And, after a few days of investigation, done by a few private agents, the truth was also revealed to the reporters. The one that spoke to them was actually Toya Todoroki, the son of Enji Todoroki. Everything matched, from quirk, natural hair color, to sharing some genetical traits from the Todoroki family. The evidence was all there. Now, all that was left was to report on the situation. They still had no way to know whether Toya's words were truthful. But just the fact that the son of the former NR.2 hero became a villain was enough to stir up some controversy. And people didn't react kindly to the news. Endeavor already had many people hating on his methods. Now, people were prying into his personal life and dragging out details about his wife, the arranged marriage, the way he treated his children. All of that publicity forced the authorities to act and launch a formal investigation into this matter. Child abuse was a crime after all. Enji was stressed beyond belief. He didn't know what to do anymore. His agency couldn't put out any fires, as a lot of scrutiny was directed to everyone that ever worked with him. He never thought he would see one of his sons become villains. The rest of his family could only watch as Enji became more and more depressed as the days passed. Even Shoto, a person that hated his father to the core, started pitying him. But, what most of them were concentrated on, was trying to speak with their long-lost brother. Enji knew his career as a hero was coming to an end. He knew there was no way for him to get out of this situation. The people were too fixated on this incident to remember anything good that he had ever done. What he wasn't expecting was his wife, Rei Todoroki, to visit their house after hearing about the situation. His children Shoto, Fuyumi and Natsuo had already reconnected with their mother. Enji had always visited his wife, trying to fix things with her. But it was too little too late. No matter how many flowers and apologies he gave her, she wasn't going to forgive him. And he had accepted that. It had made him try to treat his offsprings differently. It seems that his efforts didn't go completely noticed. Although no one forgave him, he was content to see them together once more. Now, all that was missing was Toya. It seems that they would need to try and solve this issue as a family. Chapter 102, Safety and Date. After she got done saving people that day, you can guess that she was quite tired. Not really due to her quirk, but mentally she was exhausted. I just carried her back to Rumi's room and let her sleep on my shoulder. My wife was already getting prepared to leave the hospital. It seems the doctors no longer need to keep her under observation, they already have enough on their hands anyway. I walked to her side and looked at her for a bit. I really liked seeing her ears wiggling around. She obviously noticed me staring at her like an idiot. She just glared at me. She would have shouted at me if Eri wasn't sleeping in my arms. One of the unwritten rules in our family is that there will be no shouting near Eri. It's not like Rumi is actually mad at me anyway. She also seemed excited, probably. I'm not exactly the most perceptive person, but I think skipping over to me is an indicator of excitement. I just grabbed her and hugged her a bit. Eri was still in my arms. So a hug and a kiss is most of what I can do. By the end, Rumi hung onto me like a koala on a eucalyptus tree. You know, I already have a child in my arms. I don't need a second one, I said, with a shitty smirk on my face. It was mostly an inside joke. Whenever she clung to me like this, it was for more nefarious reasons. So an offspring is always brought into the conversation when I want to tease her. I can only afford to do so because Eri is sleeping. If she was awake, all talk of that nature would cease. As that is another unspoken rule in our household. No major teasing or any dirty talk near Eri. This one is sacred. As, after slipping up once, I needed to teach Eri that some words shouldn't be said to strangers. Okay, maybe I and Rumi aren't the best qualified parents. But we love Eri, and that's all she needs, honestly. After that, we just went home. All three of us. The next few days were spent peacefully. And I even managed to call and make an appointment with that psychiatrist. Things are looking fine. I need to make sure that Eri is always safe. And Rumi. I need to train more with her. I can't really teach her anything, but I will definitely make our training more frequent than before. I can't always be there for her during fights. She's a hero after all. She will always get into fights, that's just who she is. Sticking too closely to her might even make it seem that I no longer trust her to protect herself. Something she would definitely take as an insult. Regardless, with All for One captured with little to no chances of escaping, things are looking pretty goddamn safe. One might argue that there is no way the All for One would remain captured. But that's bullshit. The only reason he could even attempt an escape in the manga is that he had Shigaraki. Now, All of his trustworthy supporters are either dead or captured. And he can't do anything to save himself. Tartaro's made sure of that. As much as I don't trust Tartaro's, mostly due to last time's blunder. I believe they employed a few different defensive systems this time. I doubt they would fall for the same quirk twice. Besides, All for One, there aren't any major villains to talk about. All of them have been captured or died. I've not seen anything about Himiko Toga, Twice or Spinner. But they aren't exactly people I need to worry about. Oh yeah. Dobby. I had forgotten about him for a few days. It seems he made himself busy tearing down his father's legacy from behind bars. The Todoroki family should be quite shocked at this development. I wonder if it will be enough to make them reconnect properly? I already laid the groundwork, now Enji just needs to let go of his pride and turn over a new leaf. To be honest, making sure Dobby was captured is the easiest part of this whole plan. Getting his Rei Todoroki discharged from the hospital was annoying to do anonymously. I did manage to pull some strings. I did mainly use her family's identity to pull it off. Turning myself into Endeavor and taking care of the paperwork. Controlling Light to that extent is actually not that bad. I doubt Endeavor would even look into that. He should be too preoccupied trying to salvage what is left of his personal life. I think his career as a hero is a bit shaky right now. But he should be able to make a comeback. At least I think so. I doubt he will have the same drive as before anyway. After a while, I stopped worrying about Endeavor. I will just let nature take its course from this point forwards. I've been tampering with his personal life enough as it is. I have my own problems to worry about. Like the fact that I have a date with Rumi planned for tonight. Eri is currently in the care of Recovery Girl. I think she likes hanging out with Chio honestly. She always looks forward to spending time with her. Even going as far as to call her Granny Kaio. I think Recovery Girl almost had a heart attack after hearing that for the first time. Anyway, I need to get ready for a great evening and a long night. Rumi has had a lot of energy lately. She will want to burn through it tonight. The date itself isn't exactly an event planned by me. We were invited to a ball by some rich folk. And since we are both bored, we decided to make it into a date. Neither one of us is really into the whole fancy party type of deal. But we figured it wouldn't matter much, we were just here for the food after all. Rumi was wearing a white dress, contrasting nicely with her tan skin. I was just wearing the suit I bought recently. It was a regular navy blue tux. I wanted to wear the same one I wore on my first date with Rumi. But she almost bit my head off when she heard that, saying I should buy more clothes to wear out with her. Oh well. Now we were just sitting at our table, enjoying our food and talking to each other. We didn't even bother saying hi to the person that invited us here, as we didn't actually know who it was. All of a sudden, a nicely dressed dude did the pompous hitting fork on a champagne glass thing to get everyone's attention. He said a few words that neither I nor Rumi bothered listening to. The date ended when we both got bored and went home to have some fun and maybe sleep, unlikely. In the end, the date went well. Although neither one of us really understood why we got invited to some random fancy party. Chapter 103, Passing Time. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Before I knew it, my first year of high school in this life was over. Many things happened, things like Eri starting to chastise me for my negligence. She's acting more and more like Rumi each passing day. A much calmer and scarier version of her. I'll preface this by saying I was really sleepy. Okay, so I woke up one morning and tried to make some pancakes. Rumi was away at work. She woke up before me to go on an early morning patrol. I somehow managed to briefly set the kitchen on fire and made a mess of the entire place. Eri bore witness to the entire thing. She kept it a secret from Rumi under one pretense. I must always supply her with sweets discreetly, regardless of Rumi's rules. I managed to clean the place quickly. I even managed to air out the room before Rumi got home. She didn't notice a thing. But I don't know where exactly Eri learned how to blackmail people, but I can only say that I am proud. Now that I think about it, she started playing around with Nizu a lot lately. Maybe he's been teaching her stuff like this. There is also Rumi. She's been getting stronger and stronger recently, to the point where she was able to advance to the 4th spot on the leaderboards. I guess it was only a matter of time. The amount of cases she's solving nowadays is quite a bit more than others. She doesn't really patrol this province anymore. Villains simply wouldn't touch this place with a 10-meter pole. Both I and All Might live here after all. It would be like asking to get caught. Talking about All Might reminds me of all the news articles that came around with his very increased media presence. The symbol of peace back in the spotlight, and the golden age never ends. In a sense, his powerful return has made the people rely on him even more. But, with his newfound strength, he is actually able to shoulder all of the responsibility. As for me, I actually somewhat faded from the spotlight. I firmly kept my place as the NR.2 hero, but I rarely ever patrol anymore. I am still known as the symbol of justice, the unmoving and all-powerful arm of the law, or the shining star are all things that come to mind when I am brought in conversation. I became as much of a household name like All Might is. I also make a lot of money out of royalties. Merch ranging from figurines to posters to t-shirts. A lot of money I have nothing to spend on. Nowadays, I spend my time doing the things that I love. Like writing manga and taking care of Eri. And One Piece has been getting quite popular over the last few months. People started taking a liking to the fresh setting and the parallels drawn to the real world. Especially after I actually learned to draw backgrounds properly. No major studio has decided to pick it up. But more and more people tune in for the weekly release. Since I work fast, I can allow myself to do that. I could release daily, but I don't want to spoil my fanbase. So I've been staying at home most of the time. Rumi may call me a bum or lazy idiot, but she's quite pleased that she gets to spend more time with me. Eri is also happy to see me at home most of the time. I barely attended school, only going there about 5 times a week. Nisa said it's okay as long as I don't miss out on my own classes. Gee, having a boss like him is really nice. Now, to talk about someone else that is just as great. The NR.3 hero Endeavor didn't retire in the end. We all thought his career would have been over, but it seems that he had quite a good foundation and fanbase. The police investigation on him also didn't go anywhere. The Todoroki family refused to testify against him, and most evidence of his wrongdoing has already been buried in the past. The only thing they have is the fact that his oldest son became a villain. He managed to remain a hero with a bit of help from All Might. He made a statement saying that his actions as a protector and a hero shouldn't be undermined by his private life. I really don't get how a guy with so little charm can make people listen to him so well. The public actually saw Toshi's actions as him looking out for a friend, something that made people sympathize with the situation a bit more. Not all was perfect, it was more like half and half. A lot of people still considered him a despicable person, fair enough though. He was never a great person, but he has been trying to work harder on his personal life. From what I've seen, he's been attempting to stabilize his family's situation. His obsession with surpassing All Might hasn't really come up anymore. Which also made Shoto a bit more cheerful. It was nice seeing him get over his emo phase and join his classmates in conversations. As for Dabi, I'm afraid he is a bit too far gone. He is completely demented after all. He is currently in prison, awaiting trial for his crimes. He gave a full confession on everything he has done in the past few years. Probably in an attempt to show just how badly Endeavor's son has ended up. The rest is his business. I doubt Enji's family will ever forgive him, but at least he is not a prick anymore. As for All for One, I wonder what would happen if he and All Might fought now. Who would win? Shame that won't ever happen. They aren't even keeping All for One awake. He is so pumped with drugs and sedatives that it's impressive he hasn't died yet. I guess they are taking his collection of quirks into account? Not that it matters. I think they want to use All for One in some way, but it hardly concerns me anymore. Even if he somehow escapes captivity, regains his lost libs and recovers a part of his lungs. He already knows that it's best to stay away from Japan. He is someone I stopped caring about after starting therapy. The psychiatrist said that I should stop being so paranoid about someone that's already behind bars. And, fair point. Having him actually captured is a lot easier than killing him. He already revived once. If I just captured him back during our first meeting, the whole UA attack wouldn't have happened. Right now, I and Toshi are watching Class 1A take their end-of-the-year exams. Both of us have to fight a team. Nothing too interesting. Oh well, this is the last day at work. I need to at least pretend to pay attention. Chapter 104, The Underworld Moving. The exams went about as you'd expect. Looking at the students get trashed by pro heroes is never not entertaining. All Might did give me a weird look when I laughed at Mineta getting whipped by midnight. I even got to fight. The team I was against was Tokoemi and Shinso. It wasn't much of a fight. But I did let Shinso brainwash me for a bit, just for curiosity's sake. Apparently, moving my body is impossible, but I can still manipulate the light around me. I simply moved my own body using the light around me. It was quite neat. Shinso's expression was also something I will make fun of for the rest of the month. The rest was quite uneventful. The students were still stronger than they should have been. But it's not by much. Some still need to train their quirks. Like Kirishima not being able to grow claws yet, or Bakugo's explosion still being as weak as in the beginning of the year. After finishing that, I just went back home and continued my life as a mangaka. Or I would have if I didn't get an unusual call. It was from an old friend. Jiren. I hadn't heard from him in a long time. Hello! Jiren, how are you? I said in a cheerful tone. Jiren isn't someone I hate. He's helped me repeatedly. It may be due to our arrangement, but he does sometimes inform me of big things. Like back at the USJ, if I didn't already know about it, his warning would have been quite nice to have. He found out about the Meta Liberation Army a bit late. Mainly because they didn't really recruit villains the normal way. They used Trumpet's charisma to gain followers and the extremists. Don't hello, me! You ruined my business, you son of dash. I let my hand fall to the side for a bit, waiting for Jiren to finish shouting at me. What does he mean by ruining his business? Guess I have to find out now. Are you done? I asked after he finished shouting and throwing a tantrum. Yeah, I'm better now, he said, with some traces of anger still present in his tone. What do you mean I ruined your business? I can guess what happened, but I don't really know the full scope of things in the underworld. I just heard a frustrated sigh from him. Then he started talking a bit more calmly, regaining his composure. Your actions slowly pushed my costumers away from this country. Every big organization has moved away from Japan entirely. Well, that was to be expected. Me killing around 13,000 villains didn't exactly make the other villains feel safe. I didn't really get any punishment, besides a fine. It wasn't even that expensive. I thought I'd at least get some prison time. But oh well. I won't complain about it. As for the rest of the villains, they were mostly captured. All that's left is a few brokers like me, looking around for contracts and places to make money. Most just left the country too. Jiren was pretty much exasperated. I guess I did kill his business, technically. Am I really the cause for such a major movement in the underworld? I asked, just to be safe. All Might is back in his prime. After all, he might also have played a part in that. What underworld? Everyone of notice in Japan is gone. The only people left are a few drug lords shivering in their boots at every move they make. Jiren said in a sad tone. Allan, there is no underworld in Japan anymore, no black market left to speak of, nothing. Well, that's quite neat. I don't mind, obviously. But I do feel bad for Jiren. He's basically lost everything he tried to build over the years. I guess I can give him a helping hand. Well, I'm not going to apologize. But I am willing to support another venture for you, I said in my usual tone. What venture could that be? I don't feel like leaving the country. He sounded a bit intrigued, but still distraught. Have you ever thought of starting a legal business? Before you start laughing, I believe you could make it quite easily. And what type of business would I start? I'm still a wanted villain and I don't feel like working for the cops. I can take care of giving you a clean slate too. It's not that hard, I just need to tell the police that you were working as an informant for me all the time. He paused after I said that, as if he was considering my offer. Fine. Just do your thing. I'll think of a business venture and return your initial investment at some point. He accepted in the end. He doesn't really care about the law, but he does like money. I guess we will remain in contact. Maybe we'll get to play some poker again? I learned a few new tricks that I want to try out. Oh well. We have enough time to ponder on that. Getting rid of his criminal record isn't really hard. My strategy? Just tell Nizu about everything, including everything Jiren has done for me and said, and he'll do it in a heartbeat. Well, not everything. But an altered version of things that will make Jiren look like a reformed individual that cares about more than just making money. Not too much altering though, Nizu easily picks up on that. And would you look at that? Nizu didn't buy the whole story, but he still accepted to help Jiren. I took him to have a talk with the police chief about this incident. My plan worked, for the most part. Jiren will be kept under surveillance for a while, but him being a double agent for me has been accepted as the truth. But the information about the underworld leaving got Nizu and the police chief quite excited. By their words, Japan is going to become a safe haven compared to other countries. Crime will still happen. But criminal organizations are all gone. Petty and crazed criminals are a lot easier to deal with than hardened criminals working in groups. Wait, does that mean I might have cost some heroes their jobs? Oh well, they ought to thank me anyway. Like the police chief did. All that's left is enjoying summer and going to the beach. I'll probably invite all of my friends. Even if I don't feel at home in the sea, I can still enjoy some sights. Like the ocean's waves crashing on the shoreline and the stones. The children building sandcastles. Oh, and Rumi wearing a bikini. Every one of those sights makes for a great motivator. Especially the last one. Chapter 105, Execution and Rings. An entire year just passed by me. It was so slow, it felt like a lifetime. Nothing interesting is happening anymore. Time passes really slowly when you're bored. It's even worse when you're bored at light speed. Nothing much is happening on the streets anymore. The hero profession is still just as sought after though. Mostly because some people still become villains. It seems that some people are just really stupid. Who would have thought? I just did my thing this entire year. Nothing much, I made sure to train the students at UA. I sometimes go for a coffee with the former Big Three. Lately, I've only hung out with Naijuru, Shinso, Toru, and Mina. I also like to invite them over to my house and make them take care of Eri while I spend my time doing other stuff. I like masking this as a house meeting. Nobody seems to mind whenever I go to pick up some soda and relax in the Bahamas for half an hour. Rumi seems to be quite happy. Although I can tell that some stuff is bothering her. And I know exactly what it is and how to fix it. I'll do it later in the week though. I really don't feel like choosing rings right now. On a more positive note. All for One just got executed a while back, it was kept down low. But I was still informed before it happened. It was done through lethal injection. Really a nice and humane way to put down someone like him. I would say, to put down a dog like him, but my therapist said I should stop dehumanizing others. Even if they are actual scum that deserves nothing but death. He was being kept alive to testify against some of his associates. He had a huge network of supporters. None that seemed able to get him out of jail though. Well, he's dead now. And I genuinely don't care at all. I don't even feel glad about it or anything. He's so far away from being a concern for me that it's not even important anymore. Rumi seemed to be a bit mad. Mainly because she wanted to fight him a bit. She seemed to accept it after I told her I had crippled him back in the raid. I kinda forgot to tell her about that. It wasn't like I kept it a secret, it just never came up. Well, whatever. Rumi can fight me if she wants a strong opponent. And she does. We've been fighting daily for quite a few months now. I don't even care about fighting anymore, but more time spent together with her is always nice. I've almost completely stopped doing hero work. I still show up from time to time, just to show the public that I wasn't dead. But, as I am now, I stand solidly at the NR2 spot. All Might being the number one still. I think he will keep being the symbol of peace for at least a few more dozen years. I don't really care about the ranking anymore. I've got friends. I've got a girlfriend. I even have a daughter. My therapist said that I should learn to be content with what I have. I always thought I was, but I guess I sometimes just took things for granted. Like Rumi's feelings, for example. I always made sure to reciprocate them, but I just recently realized that it's about time to take things further. And, as I said, buying rings isn't all that great. Finding out her size wasn't an issue. But, when choosing a ring, I need to remember what type of person Rumi is. She isn't exactly the type of gal that would wear diamonds. I think a ruby would fit her best. But I might need another opinion on this. So I went to my colleagues. The first person I asked was Midnight. Big mistake. Her squeal seemed to crack the windows of the office room we were in. It alerted all the other teachers. She shooed them off. But they all realized something was up. I just hope she can keep her mouth shut for a few days. And, as for her suggestion, I'd rather not wear a ring. So I went to the one I should have gone to in the first place. 13. The conversation went something like this. Hey, 13. Say, what do you know about engagement rings? She just looked at me like I was an idiot or something. So that's what Midnight was gushing about? Why in the name of all that's sacred, would you ask her that? Yep, there it is. The scolding. After she talked a bit about me and my relationship with Rumi, she decided that the best ring would be an extremely simple one. Not an overbearing piece of rock stuck to a moderately expensive metal. Something that I can agree to. I think I'd want something that Rumi can wear comfortably during her hero work. After a while, she even recommended a few jewelry shops in and outside the country. I didn't ask how she knew so many of them. But I did have to visit them all before I made a decision. You better hurry. I doubt Namuri can keep a secret of that nature for long. Was the last thing she added to her words after going back to whatever she was doing before I interrupted her. I just nodded my head and left. I had quite a few places to visit. I also need to plan the proposal itself. I don't really know if I should do something over the top or just keep it simple. I might have to ask another friend for help on this one. I wore a great disguise while shopping for rings. If the journalists saw me entering a jewelry shop and asked for engagement rings, they would have an article written before I even got home, which would be like seconds. In the end, I decided on a simple silver ring with a small ruby on it. It was by no means expensive. I could have afforded to buy the whole shop, brag, but I really doubt Rumi would like something too expensive. Unless they are brass knuckles or something of that nature. I remember that she once got a pair of electric gloves. I don't even know where she got them from, but she kept teasing me with them. I usually enjoyed a bit of fun teasing, but not when it's electrical. Regardless, I've got the ring. Now I need to propose, and that's it. Chapter 106, Final Chapter, A Proposal to Remember and Ending. Getting things ready for my proposal took a bit of time. It's been a while since I planned something so extensively. But it's not like I started planning for it only yesterday. I have made preparations for this development. Well, I planned this for a date. But using it to propose seems perfectly viable. I still needed to ask for help from a great friend of mine. His performance will dictate whether or not this plan will succeed. And I have no doubt he will. And now, to get Rumi out of the house. I walk into the living room. Ari and Rumi are watching the television. Ari is also going to come out to town with me and Rumi. I just think it's something she should be included in. I also didn't want to take her to Chio on such short notice. It would be quite rude, although she certainly wouldn't mind spending even more time with Eri. Rumi, Eri, we're going out, I said, taking on a confident tone. Both of them just looked at me for a bit. Then they looked at each other. Rumi finally decided to speak. What do you want? Great, feeling really welcome already. I guess they are watching Rumi's favorite cartoon. I have a wonderful day planned for us, I said with a smile on my face. Sounds boring, said Eri, as she turned back to the television. Shit, I need to pitch this property to them. I cannot afford to fail on the first step of my plan. Come on. I have an amusement park in mind. There will certainly be sweets there. Eri's eyes lit up, whilst Rumi looked at me with scorn. Before she even began to chastise me, I continued speaking. Eri's attention is already hooked, now I just need to bribe Rumi. They are also going to have Karo dash. Before I even finished, she facepalmed and released a sigh. Geez, is it that time of the month? Alright, we'll go with you. Just because you sound pathetic. Also, you're clearly up to something. Okay, I'll ignore the last part. The reason for a recent drop in mood is something I already know. She might be a bit mad at me that I didn't propose to her already. Which, fair enough, I did postpone this for a while. It's certainly something I regret doing. She has been somewhat irritable for a few months now. At first, it wasn't that easy to notice, mainly because she always likes to act mad. But it became clear that something was up a few weeks back. She started ignoring me from time to time. It's a strange way of asking for attention on her part, but I can understand it, somewhat. She hasn't dropped any obvious hints in conversations, although she would sometimes bang her ring finger on the dinner table right in front of me. It's quite stupid that I didn't notice it before. Great! Let's go then. I'll transport us there, I said in an excited tone. Eri was the only one that matched it. Rumi would probably also be excited if she knew what I was planning. I waited a bit for the two of them to get dressed for an outing. Eri wore a dress and a yellow pair of boots, and Rumi just wore her jeans and a casual t-shirt. I encased all of us in light and started flying us there. Eri seemed to be really enjoying the ride, but Rumi was still a bit pissed off. After a while, we reached an amusement park that looked amazing. It was located in the middle of the mountains. What sketchy place did you drag us to? Rumi asked, looking around the forest behind her. Rumi was the only one bothered by the location though. As Eri started jumping around, it was like having an entire playground for her. The entire place was devoid of any people besides the staff. They were smiling cheerfully and making fast food or sweets in stands. Others were manning the attractions. It was looking quite lively for an empty amusement park. I am the one that actually decided to invest and build this place. It's more of a personal getaway. I wanted to use it for a date with Rumi and maybe a few outings with friends and family. But now, it's the perfect place for this. We went around a bit. Rumi had started enjoying herself too. Eri's happiness is very contagious. Maybe this place being empty also has a hand in that enjoyment of hers. I doubt she'd be having as much fun if this place was crowded and bursting with visitors. After a while, it was already evening. A shout could be heard. The second part of my plan was starting. It is me. All three of us could hear a boisterous voice from the side. A person dressed in a black latex suit with a cape of the same color landed there. His muscles were not really hidden properly by his attire. He was also about as tall as I am. A powerful villain. He was wearing a hood and a purple wig. It was almost blown off by the shockwave of his arrival. There were also 2 yellow tufts of hair sticking out of his hoodie. Don't worry, everyone. I'll stop this heinous criminal, I said, taking a step forward. Oh! It's Mr. Toshinori. Eri smiled happily. Rumi just looked at us, as she rubbed her forehead. What the fuck are you two doing? That was all she could say. Language! said the heinous villain. Really, he ruined it with his shit disguise. Toshi, for fuck's sake. You are a terrible actor. He just looked at me with some anger. What did you want me to do? I am too recognizable, Toshi said, pointing his finger at me. At this point, his hood was already down. His wig was probably taken away by the wind or something. This was supposed to be your moment. Why did you not dress properly? What type of villain wears a latex suit and a cape? I said, taking a pause for a bit. Actually, don't answer that last one. Mommy, why are Daddy and All Might fighting? Asked Eri in the background. Oh, it's because they are idiots, sweetie. Rumi had a really bright smile while saying that. At least my plans crashing down on my head is something she finds joy in. Eri just nodded her head, seemingly innocent. Toshi. We'll talk about this later. He just nodded a bit and awkwardly coughed in his palm. I finally looked at Rumi. Well, now that my plan is ruined, I think it's just better to show my hand and tell you what this whole thing was supposed to be. You better. I don't appreciate you wasting my free time. If the park wasn't fun, I would have already beaten you up, Rumi said in a simple tone. Eri just watched on, a bit confused. Well, I was going to make up some situation that would make both of us fight together. I was really not expecting things to go this way. Fighting has always been a way to bond for us. Even if I no longer care much for it, it's still important to Rumi. I needed someone strong for a prolonged group fight that Rumi could go all out against. Toshi is the only person on that list, and he really isn't great in situations like these. I can't really blame him entirely. I should have manipulated the light around him to give him a better, illusionary, costume, but it's too late for that. Not even Eri's quirk can salvage this situation. Rumi looked at me for a bit. She didn't seem to dislike the notion of a decent fight by my side. I just sighed. No reason to make this last any longer. I was going to do this at the end of the fight. I took a knee, becoming eye level with her. Her eyes were overwhelmed by surprise. Her hands quickly flew to hide the smile on her face. A particularly small case appeared in my palm. It opened up, almost by itself. Rumi, will you marry me? It was a shoddy attempt. But Rumi seemed to not really care about all that. Her eyes were tearing up as she stared at the simplistic yet beautiful pair of rings in front of her. Eri was a bit confused, but she seemed to get what was going on in the end. As a cute squeal left her mouth. Toshi, my one and only wingman, who I will still blame for the failure of my plan, smiled happily looking at this scene. Of course. You goofy idiot, what took you so long? One of her hands was wiping her tears while the other was pointing at me. Well, I was waiting for the right moment. But I really hated seeing you hurt because of it. So I decided to take the next step now, I said, as the smile on my face seemed to glow on its own. Even without me using my devil fruit. I slowly stood up and put the ring on her finger, while she put the other on mine. It was sweet. Both of our hands were trembling a bit, both in excitement. After that, we just kissed. Eri was laughing happily at this point, and Toshi looked away a bit. The staff quickly did what I told them yesterday. The plan didn't pan out properly, but they quickly started throwing flowers and confetti. It was like colorful rain. Eri started twirling around in them, and Toshi tilted his head a bit. Even after we were done kissing, she didn't let go of my hand. We walked towards Eri, and hugged her together. After that, we parted for a bit. Me going to Toshi, and Rumi taking Eri's hand a bit, as they started speaking about some things. I patted my wingman on his back. Thanks for helping today. Even if the plan failed. No problem. Sorry for that, by the way, he said, not looking me in the eye. His voice was also a lot less boisterous. Toshi was always soft-spoken in his free time. Don't sweat it anymore, no reason to worry about it. It all worked out in the end, I said with a reassuring voice. He sighed a bit. Next thing on the list is to get you a girlfriend. I don't want to see you alone at my wedding, I said. He seemed to be a bit exasperated. You know, I just might. There are not many villains left on the streets to occupy my time. His voice seemed to get some confidence. I may be in my 40s, but I still have a chance. He looked at his hand and clenched a bit. Don't worry your head over that. I'll be your wingman too, I said with confidence. Toshi seemed to have some sweat on his eyebrow. The future is looking bright, I said, looking at the setting sun. Yeah, said Toshi, as he finally relaxed a bit. We stared at it for a few seconds. By the way, you still need to pay for the tiles you damaged with your landing. What? Chapter 107, Epilogue, A Peaceful World. The years went by quickly. I grew older and older. I am currently 32. There aren't many things happening in Japan anymore. Villains are pretty much extinct from this place. The news of Japan being pretty much crime-free, aside from petty crime and other stuff, spread around the world quickly. It raised the number of migrants by quite a lot. It also raised villainy briefly. All Might was quick to snuff out any wrongdoers. The profession of hero is pretty much done at this point. There are only those that help with disasters. The rest are pretty much out of a profession. A lot moved to other countries to continue their dream jobs though. So it wasn't all that bad. As for other things that happened around these parts, Midoriya became All Might's sidekick in the end. He's pretty strong now. And Toshi is already in his mid-50s, still being a symbol, and he's still healthy as energetic as me, doesn't say much. Bakugo moved away to China. He went on to become the #1 hero there. He easily outclassed the heroes there. His explosive entrance made him quite famous worldwide. But not as famous as Toshi and I. We are basically known as peacebringers at this point. Heh, I remember getting called once to deal with a case in the USA. Someone that had a copy of All for One was still running around there. I guess he fled Japan after my massacre a decade back. I flew there and took care of him, capturing him in less than a second. Even if my power stagnated all this time, there is still no one even close to matching me. Midoriya might be decent, but he's not anywhere near my level. Good thing I mostly gave up on fighting. A life revolving around it would have been really boring. I only do it when Rumi asks for a spar or when it's truly needed. But on the topic of Rumi, my wedding with her was quite something. It was an outside wedding. It started raining midway, which made me blow away the clouds a bit. They returned eventually though. I sometimes think that was the spirit of that storm-controlling villain fucking with me. But it still went quite well. Toshi and I ended up taking turns to blow the clouds away. Jiren also showed up with presents. He got a few glares due to his thuggish appearance, but all was fine. My best man was still Toshi. Mainly because he was free. And Jiren really doesn't like wearing a suit. Naijuru and Shinso were also present, but not really accustomed to giving speeches. So they weren't a great option. Other than them, Cementos and Aizawa. They just didn't want to, saying I should just give the role to Toshi. I got the same answer from Lunch Rush, who made the food for the wedding. I did have to pay him quite a bit though. It was worth it. And I couldn't really ask Toru to be my best man. Although I tried and got punched for it. Really didn't see that coming. Bakugo didn't really show up, and Izuku is still a stuttering mess, even after all these years. Mirio and Tamaki were also there. Mirio was just really excited about this whole thing. And Tamaki was just being himself, shy and quiet. Wish I could say the same about Nijire. She flew over here from France just to congratulate me and Rumi. Loudly congratulate, to be more specific. Oh well. At least it was fun. My wedding was also the first time I met Rumi's family. And they were quite accommodating. Not really gushing over my fame or trying to find reasons to hate me. They were just regular people, which is really nice to see these days. They seem to be quite nice. Making me wonder where Rumi got her temper from. Not gonna say that to her face, of course. I have a cult following now. It's really annoying. I can't go and buy groceries in Japan anymore. I need to go to America instead. Not much better, but it works. I really don't get how Toshi handles fame. I even managed to get him a girlfriend. Although he hasn't married yet. Rumi and I now live in a much bigger house. A villa actually. But we do have 6 children, so we do use every room. As for how exactly we reached this number, things might have gotten out of hand at some point. Eri didn't mind the siblings though. She moved to America to go to college there. She also said she wants to become a hero there. Which was only accepted because I can visit her daily anyway. Rumi also visits her from time to time. Sometimes choosing to spend a weekend with Eri, leading me to take care of the children. Our youngest child is about 3 years old. As for the rest, they are of varying ages. The oldest being 14. A rebellious kid really. Most of them have rabbit-related quirks. Only 2 have some strain of light manipulation. But they are all lovely. Even worse is that every single one of them seems to want to be like me and become a hero. Why can't they wish to become mangakas? It's a much safer profession. Oh well, can't really complain. They are following their dreams. Something I like to see. Back to the topic of manga, One Piece. I really slowed down its pace after it got famous. There is an adaptation happening right now too. So I left it off at Luffy facing off against Big Mom. I'm still wondering how exactly I should end it. But I have time. Not like anyone's rushing me. The Todoroki family moved to the United States. Dabi is still in prison. He was sentenced to life in prison after all. But the family was able to stay together in the end. Well, from what I understand, Endeavor is still trying to mend things with his wife. But he's mostly been accepted as the family fuck-up. And that seemed to be good enough for him. He giving up on his hero business and to become a baker. A fucking baker. I would laugh in his face. But he does make really good stuff. His wife also helps him with that. Shoto chose to continue being a hero. He is also #1 in the USA now. Really, how many talented people attended UA that year? Kirishima is in Australia, fighting off villains and deadly kangaroos. He's together with Mina still. They are pretty much inseparable. Toru is also with the 2 of them most times. I wonder, does he? I mean, I wouldn't blame him. I sometimes gather everyone together for a party, both the former class 1B and 1A. We usually just stand around drinking and gossiping. And just like that, I manage to keep my friendships alive by traveling a lot. Thankfully, I am still the fastest being alive. So the traveling doesn't take much time or energy. Dad! Where did you put the Golden Age costume? Screamed my oldest son. None of my children seems to have taken much from me, besides my tallness that is. My oldest, Yumita, is already 1.8 meters tall. And he still has some growing to do. He didn't hit his growth sprout early like I did. Just look in the closet. I screamed back at him. Communication in this household is always like this. As for the Golden Age costume, he's referring to my hero costume. Although it's too big for him, he probably wants to show it off to his friends. He has a light manipulation quirk. He can shoot out lasers just like I could. But he's not impossible to hit, like I did. I didn't think my quirk would be genetically passed down. Mainly because it was originally a devil fruit. But I guess God had to make it genetic so it would match the definition of a quirk. Although none of my children inherited it, yet. I am also no longer as handsome as I was before, never was pal. But I still don't look too shabby. At least I have all of my hair on my head. My eyes still look tired at all times. Really, this must be a genetical trait of some kind. Yumita also has my eyes. I sometimes thought about plastic surgery. But that just seemed shallow. I am already loved by Rumi, what else do I need? Most of the free time I have, I spend with Rumi and the kids. I still have that amusement park, and we frequent it quite a bit. I also let Toshi take his girlfriend there. Who, by the way, is Izuku's mom. Yeah. I really didn't expect that. I didn't know Izuku's father had abandoned them. But I guess I never really cared enough to find out. The only thing that disappoints me is that I couldn't see Izuku's reaction to this the first time he heard it. I know he didn't mind at all. But the sheer shock must have put him to sleep, at least. Well, at least Shoto can now say he was somewhat right. Izuku might not be All Might's love child, but he's his stepson. Although Toshi hasn't married Inko yet. They are already in their 50s. So they won't be changing partners anytime soon. Other than that, life is just peaceful. I've no need to wear my costume anymore. But I am still a symbol. And I will remain one for the rest of my life. Not that I mind. I've got a lot of friends and a pretty big family. What else could I want from life? That's the end of this tale. Thank you for watching. And engaging with the channel as you have. We're trying to build a community here. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next story.